the this meeting of the City of Gainesville Board of Trustees Retiree Health Insurance Trust Fund for June 22nd. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed. I see no questions. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Is Commissioner Sacco joining us now, or will that be?
She is.
I'm here.
Okay,
She is.
Okay. Hi, Commissioner Sacco.
So there was an I. I'm just not fast enough.
Gotcha, that's all right. And we know we have a couple more who will be here for later meetings, I believe. All right, Madam Clerk.
Our business discussion item for today is 2023-553, FY audited financial statements, independent auditors reports, and annual audit governance letters for the retiree health insurance program, with a recommendation that the Board of Trustees for the Retirement Health Insurance Fund accept the fiscal year 2022 audited financial statements.
Welcome, Madam Auditor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. We are here today, Brecca Anderson, Interim City Auditor. We're here today to hear a presentation to present the audited financial statements on Purvis Gray did complete the audited financial statements. They were issued and they were referred to the City Commission on June 6th by the Audit Committee, and the City Commission approved on the 15th of June, and we are here to present on today. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Barbara Boyd with Purvis Gray Partner.
Very good, thank you. Welcome, Ms. Boyd. I feel a sense of deja vu.
Good. Good afternoon. We meet again. So I'm here to present the results of the Retiree Health Insurance Program fiscal year 22 audit. You received an unmodified or a clean opinion on those set of financial statements, and no internal control weaknesses, material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were reported. You also received a governance letter. In that governance letter is included certain information that will help you assess the results of the audit, such as the significant estimates or accounting policies, but nothing to note on those letters. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, then motion perhaps?
I motion to approve 2023-533 FY22 audited financial statements.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to follow staff recommendation. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
So that was a yes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I will try to be a little slower on calling the nays. All right, that is unanimous. And it looks like that is it for this particular meeting. We are adjourned for just a moment. All right, I will call to order the City of Gainesville General, no, that's general policy, not that one.
Pension. Yeah.
The Board of Trustees for the Gainesville General Employees Pension Plan for June 22nd, 2023. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
We have a motion second to adopt the agenda as offered. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. We have an agenda. Madam Clerk.
Our first business discussion item is 2023-533, FY 2022 audited financial statements, independent auditors report, and annual audit governance letters for the General Employee Pension Fund, with recommendation that the Board of Trustees for the General Employees Pension Plan accept the fiscal year 2022 audited financial statements.
Welcome, Madam Auditor.
Hi, Brecca Anderson, Interim City Auditor. Haven't seen you all in a while. So on this item, of course, this is related to the General Employee Pension Fund audited financial statements, and Ms. Barbara Boyd is here again with Purvis Gray to present that item.
Very good, thank you. Welcome again, Ms. Boyd.
Well, similar to the retiree health insurance program with the general employees pension plan, we issued the financial statements for fiscal year 2022. And in that, you received an unmodified opinion, clean opinion, and no internal control, material weaknesses, or significant deficiencies were reported. And again, you have that governance letter with you, and there were no significant matters to report in that letter.
Very good, thank you. Anyone from the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Book?
This is just a very quick comment. It appears with all the different auditing reports that we're having come back in our financial statements that we're really on a good fiscal plan, and we're really tightening up to make sure that we're looking good going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Yes, we are making sure that we are entirely buttoned up and receiving these at every possible juncture to dot every I, cross every T. Did you have a motion?
Yes, move staff's recommendation.
Okay.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt this per staff recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That is unanimous, Madam Clerk.
Our next item is 2023-618, application for disability retirement for Georgette Bowie, with the recommendation that the Board of Trustees of the General Employees Pension Plan approve the disability retirement application for Georgette Bowie.
Welcome, Mr. Marvell.
Good afternoon, Steve Varvel in his traditional role as Risk Management Director. If it is with the approval of the Board of Trustees, I'm going to go do all three of them at once because it's really about process versus individual, talking about each individual.
I think that's
You
appropriate.
will have to obviously act on them separately, but the recommendations are all the same. Ms. Bowie, Mr. Cruz, and, excuse me, the last name escapes me,
Epley.
and Ms. Epley, all applied for out-of-line disability retirements. The standard of the plan is unable to perform sedentary work on an uninterrupted basis, which is essentially a Social Security, any occupation definition. The process includes the provision of medical documentation that goes to a third-party independent medical review. It comes back to a disability review committee where we go over the recommendations and the restrictions. We look at available positions with the city that may fit in that, and then we reach a conclusion and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. In all three cases, the Disability Review Committee has met, we've done our due diligence, and we are recommending approval of all three disability retirements.
Very good, thank you. Any questions from the public on this one? Or on these? Okay. Any questions, concerns from the board? Okay.
I motion to approve the disability retirement application of Georgette Bowie.
We have a motion and a second for 2023-618. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I motion to approve the application for disability retirement for Eddie Cruz.
Second?
We have a motion and a second for 2023-620. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
I motion to approve the application for disability retirement for Patricia Epley.
Second. We have a motion and a second for 2023-621. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. And we are adjourned until 1 o'clock. General Policy Committee meeting for June 22nd, 2023. Once again, I feel like I have a little deja vu. It's the third time we've done this in the last 20 minutes. But we do have a busy agenda this afternoon, and I look forward to getting to it. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Madam Clerk.
Our next item is the approval of the minutes for June 8th, 2023 meeting, with a recommendation that the General Policy Committee approve these minutes.
I move approval of the minutes from June 8th, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes from June 8th. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All righty, Madam Clerk.
Our first business discussion item for the afternoon is 2023-211 Urban and Greenway Trail Master Plans, with a recommendation that the General Policy Committee hear a presentation from staff and discuss.
We're actually going to get to it this time.
That's
gonna
wonderful.
happen.
That's wonderful. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Morgan Spicer, Policy Oversight Administrator. I am joined today by one of our former Policy Research Fellows, Mikhail, who his time with us as a Policy Research Fellow ended in April, but we are very lucky that he was able to return with us today and share this research that he conducted on urban and greenway trail master plans. So he'll share a little bit about ongoing efforts in this space in the city, and then talk a little bit about what some other cities are doing in relation to master plans in effort to streamline their trail systems. Just to briefly start us off with the phases of the policy process, phase 1 is research and idea formulation, which resulted in Mikhail's report, and then we are in phase 2, which is GPC consideration. And with that, I will turn it over to Mikhail.
Welcome, and thank you for being flexible with us.
Of course, no, thank you so much. It's a privilege to finally present such a topic. Like Morgan stated, my name is Mikhail Mikhailov, also known as Mikhail, and I had the honor of actually being a Policy Research Fellow for this past academic year, and one of the subject matters was urban and greenway trails. So without further ado, let us commence with some of our findings. So firstly, I'd like to identify or define what exactly are urban and greenway trails. Both these terminologies are often used interchangeably, and they refer to public paths reserved for non-motorized forms of transport that provide a well-maintained corridor through an urban environment. There are many purposes for urban trails and greenway trails, but some of the primary ones are listed here: transportation-based, recreation-based, and environment-based. Firstly, urban trails allow people to get from one place to another through multimodal forms of transport, which include foot, bicycle, strollers, and of course wheelchairs. There's actually a reduced threat from nearby motored vehicles, which is very essential to urban trails. There's also the fact that pathways to parks and other activity-based areas are denoted for enjoyment or entertainment. Of course, when it comes to the environment aspect, there's a consideration for the surrounding plants, animals, and other wildlife. And of course, there have been studies that indicate that pedestrian and bicycle transportation can lower carbon emissions. Now, in order to actually consider these factors, a lot of municipalities create master plans, which aim to improve connectivity to local destinations, close gaps in the trail system, increase safety and accessibility for our trail users, support economic development, and enhance the quality of life for area residents. Of course, master plans could vary by municipality, and there could be very multifaceted, but some commonly included factors are a consideration for surrounding environments, the attempt to link existing facilities together into a cohesive system, which oftentimes include equitable access to parks, their distribution, and bike pedestrian connectivity as considerations. Of course, there's also sections for analysis, recommendations, and proposals for a site's key components. These key components include some of the ones listed here, which is a number of people who may be affected by the proposals, population, traffic demographics, and others. As for the city of Gainesville, there is no explicit urban trail or greenway master plan, even though there have been discussions about a greenway loop along the Sweetwater corridor within the wild spaces, public places discussion. There is a master plan for the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, which was adopted in 2012 and provides a blueprint for how Gainesville's system of parks operates, what type of recreation and cultural facilities are present, and what improvements can be done for these facilities and the conditions. An update is ongoing for this master plan. Instead of allocating resources towards a formal trail master plan, the city has opted to focus resources on advancement of multimodal system improvements. And some of these factors that have been taken into consideration include available rights of way, utility easements, cost effectiveness, equity, and so forth. Now, the City Department of Transportation continues to work on the system expansion and accessibility. It has identified other potential opportunities for trails to be pursued in the future, and other trail opportunities will be evaluated as part of the update to the Alachua County-wide Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. And this is actually funded in partnership with the city, Alachua County, and UF. An example of an already done project is that of the 6th Street Trail between Depot Avenue and Northwest 6th Avenue, which could be present here at the bike facility system map. There is a trail design criteria, which is included in the city's engineering design and construction manual, which would also be covered in the city's mobility plan. Now, of course, municipalities and the concept of master plans is very complex. So if you want more information and, in addition, other case studies, I highly recommend reading up on our report. But 3 that we are going to highlight here, as well as go into a little bit more depth, is the Flagstaff, Arizona master plan, Austin, Texas, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So let's start off with the Flagstaff Urban Trail System, located in Flagstaff, Arizona. The Flagstaff urban system is a citywide network of non-motorized shared-use pathways, and there are about 56 miles of urban trails present in the region. The Flagstaff Regional Trail Strategy was drafted in 2019 and was actually commenced in the same year and expected to run through 2030. Some of the trail system goals that were outlined were realigning unsustainable trail segments, building new trailheads, creating a trail ambassadors program, and so forth. The master plan shows about 75 miles of future trails to complete a plan system of a total of 131 miles. Some of the actual priorities that the report outlines are through a threefold manner. First, there's obviously a trail segment ranking, where trail segments are broken into logical segments and then analyzed and placed in a table which indicates what their priority ranking is. Using the evaluation criteria, these priorities are established to increase the urgency or the necessity of a focus for the set segments. And of course, there's going to be a connectors and access trails focus, where it outlines the connectors and access trails, which are short segments of the trails that provide access to various denoted areas such as neighborhoods, schools, commercial areas, and institutional uses. Moving on to the urban trail system, we have in Austin around 300 miles are present of trails, and 60 are defined as urban trails. The City of Austin Urban Trail Master Plan was developed and adopted as a component of the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan in 2014. Some of the outline goals that were established were creating a sense of place within Austin, as well as making sure that those non-motorized paths have a recreational purpose. And of course, some of the criteria that were focused on were fourfold, with a proximity to a tractor's destination, residential population of census tract within half a mile, making sure that there is a prioritization of the most dense areas, connectivity, and community support. Given historical levels of funding and resources, the City of Austin Urban Trails Program estimates it could take about 10 to 25 years to develop 47 miles of what they define as Tier 1 urban trails, depending, of course, on political and financial support. The master plan also outlines a variety of environmental constraints of the corridor, which must be evaluated. This includes topography, drainage, and wildlife habitat, as well as other components like property ownership. These components are reviewed by the Watershed Protection Department, the Parks and Recreation Department, as well as the Planning and Development Review Department. And of course, through ATX Walk, Bike, Roll, they are updating their 2014 Urban Trails Plan to be more congruent with sidewalks, bike lanes, and crosswalks. Moving on to Florida, a region that we are really familiar with. Jacksonville's Beach Urban Trails. Specifically, their Urban Trails Master Plan project initiatives began in early of August of 2021 with community engagement and fact-finding efforts as their prioritization. The master plan was adopted in 2022, and now the city is going through a prioritization process of construction with an emphasis on a 10-year layout. The project director that I spoke with has estimated around $15 million for the completion of the 10-year plan, with around $900,000 for 2023 and another $1 million for each remaining year. The main concern right now is having safe resident accessibility to the beach. The city is looking into grants to potentially decrease the time it will take to complete this project. Some of the following principles that were prioritized within their construction plan was 6 actually. Connectivity, making sure that there is a connection between multiple green spaces and parks into the overall network. Accessibility, providing shared use paths for users to enjoy recreation and to traverse from important origins. Safety, making sure that there are lighting and safe dedicated crossings within the network. Making sure there's a sense of place to develop a complete wayfinding system and having a reinforced sense of being in Jacksonville Beach. Having a multimodal purpose, accommodating for a wide range of travel forms, including, once again, pedestrians, bicycles, strollers, and wheelchairs. Of course, having a policy approach is very important, providing policy recommendations and guidelines for improving transportation connectivity and mobility for the future. Now, we have to identify what are some advantages of urban trail master plans. Firstly, it actually helps make a prioritization of urban trail components and makes it much simpler to see those prioritizations, making sure that there is an optimality within it. Then, of course, by labeling the trail costs, timeline, and layout, master plans can have a great effect on city planning transparency, which bleeds into the third advantage, which is the fact that this could lead to future private-public sector partnerships within these urban trails. Of course, we must identify the disadvantages as well. Firstly, the city already has specific documents. It has the bicycle facilities map. It has the PRCA master plan and others that were listed within this presentation. So creating another master plan specifically for the Greenway urban trails will take substantial staff time and resources to develop. The second disadvantage is that there may be environmental constraints that we have to look out for as outlined within the actual Austin urban trails master plan previously mentioned. That might impact the efficiency and effectiveness of expanding or connecting these trails. The third and last disadvantage is the development of this trail master plan can somewhat be perceived as slow and drawn out to the community. So that is all. Thank you so much for your time for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. I'll just end with the following phases of the policy process. Phase 3 is timeline development. Phase 4 is full staff analysis and proposal development. Phase 5 would return to GPC. And then Phase 6 is the implementation, if that's the will of the commission. And that's what we have for you today. I think Mikhail has to leave to get back to class. But thank you again, Mikhail, and thank you all, commissioners, mayor commissioners. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for being flexible with us and for going through this a couple times. Okay. Anyone? Commissioner Eastman? Yeah.
Thank you. I requested this be on there, and I actually also requested like a short presentation. I asked for this about a year ago, and since that time, there's been a number of community conversations that have happened with this, and we've also gotten some data back. So I'm going to make it short. I know we got a lot of things on the agenda, but can I get the clicker up here? So I'm a visual person, so I like to have these things like this, as well as with PowerPoint. So I just kind of wanted to start off by pointing out some of the things that have come out since we first came out with this, which is our wild space public places data. I know this is probably small for where you guys are, but what came back across the boards is each one of the districts for what people said they wanted versus what they don't think they had enough of. And the number one across all of it was walking trails and nature trails. That this was the number one thing people said they wanted. This is their priority ranking within that. That's District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4 is the one thing that brought our whole community together was wanting to see these expanded. And it's also something that we utilize a whole lot as a city. We have walking and hiking trails, nature trails, natural areas. In fifth place there at about half is the Thomas Center galleries. So a lot of people are really using these within our community. And I think we're at a really good place right now, whereas we're talking about a future in which we may not have as much operating funds for ongoing projects. That the nice thing about this being the number one amenity people are asking for is that as a relative to other programs that we do, it is not incredibly expensive, and it is something that people are really looking for. So thinking of the two disadvantages that Mikhail highlighted, which is kind of the amount of time that it takes to go through a comprehensive plan and how it may potentially be duplicative of the bicycle pedestrian master plan we have coming up, certain trails things that are coming up. I think there's a way that we could be a little more or we could do this in-house and be a little bit more streamlined and work with outside partners. And I'll go into more of these. But one, just create a plan of greenways and trail corridors across our city, plans that have already kind of been in the works for a number of years. Streamline acquisition of land for greenways and trails, improve accessibility for the existing greenways and trails, and better utilize city land for greenways and trails, and then promote Gainesville's greenways and brand as a trail town, which I see Scott in the room. I think, Scott, you worked on that proposal to make Gainesville a trail town a couple of years ago. I'll get into this. So to understand Gainesville, I think it's worth remembering one of the first things that got folks here in the first place was the fact that we were a city built on a number of creeks, and a lot of our creeks and where creeks go is where a lot of our parks are. For good reason. It is where you can't really build near it. People like going next to the creek. So we have a lot of the great nature trails and nature amenities that we have. As you can see in the green spaces, they all kind of revolve around where the creeks go. But there's a number of kind of missing spots in here that are also unbuildable that exist. And there's some of these are all private land. This is all things that are not within the city of Gainesville, but some of these are all within kind of the urban area of the city of Gainesville. And there's some of the most incredible environmental spaces that we have in our community. Going up, this is primarily along the Hogtown Creek, which I'll go into in a moment. And these are all, as I mentioned, unbuildable, which means that they are fairly inexpensive. They are already connected to a lot of the green spaces that we already own, and they exist. We just kind of have to consistently be looking at acquisition, kind of figuring out ways to build partnerships that would allow us to get in there. And so right now, over the years, we've kind of looked at these greenways. Alachua Conservation Trust currently has a greenways initiative where they're looking at this as well. And they kind of go along three different parallels. You have the Hogtown Creek Greenway, which was a big plan in the 1980s that connects all the way from the Hogtown Creek headwaters down through Alfred E. Ring Park, through Loblolly Woods, into down to the southwest side and into Split Rock Conservation Area. There's also the Sweetwater Branch Greenway that we're currently working on that is going to be essentially a multi-use trail. And then Lake Forest Creek Greenway, which is to the east, which more practically kind of starts at, I'm blanking on the name. That Morningside Nature Center up to the north, and then kind of snakes down into Cynthia Moore Chestnut Park. So a lot of it's in the county, but all of these have essentially empty land throughout them. I know the Alachua Conservation Trust is looking at purchasing this land and connecting them, and it's something we talked about for years, but have not focused on as much in recent years, and I think is a good time to pick that back up. So as Mikhail mentioned, there's a lot of most places have something like this. I found Leon County has a trails greenways master plan. Putnam County has a trails master plan. Seminole County, even the other Gainesville up to our north in Georgia has their own. They've merged theirs into their PRCA. So we do need to be thinking about planning and expansion because these are not particularly expensive to purchase, but they do kind of require striking when the iron's hot, seeing when property acquisition is coming up, and making sure that staff is sort of staying on there and looking forward. Creating a structure for land acquisition. So we have an acquisition list currently, but right now I believe it's in, Mr. Persons, you mentioned this to me before, but we have, I think there's one staff member who works in the acquisition department. Is that?
Well, I would say, Mr. Mayor, we have a single land rights coordinator who works on the general government side. They're stationed in sustainable development, but they help sort of facilitate acquisition when land acquisition comes up for the myriad of reasons that the city acquires land. That's the person that does all the real estate transaction, communicates with the potential seller, kind of goes back and forth, does all the closing, all of that, works with outside counsel.
Okay. And there's a lot of different funding sources in which you can use for acquisition. There's public works funding sources that work for stormwater runoff, things like that. But right now it's all kind of in different areas, and so finding a way to streamline that, and then potentially exploring a partnership with the Alachua Conservation Trust. The county uses them a lot for their land acquisition. We work with them on Split Rock Conservation Area, and I know that they've been really interested in exploring a partnership with us to have someone that could build that capacity up that would allow us to be looking at these kind of nature trails and the expansion of them. So this is, and this is a really exciting parcel. I know that ACT has been looking at this, but it's a good example of we have, during the Hogtown Creek discussion, we purchased these as a full connection area from 29th Road down to Alfred A. Ring. There's a number of little parcels that are in here that would connect us very easily from 29th Road Nature Park down through very, very nice trails here, down through Loblolly Woods, and all the way through the Hogtown Creek Greenway in fairly short order, in order to that all that takes really is just kind of a bird dogging of the acquisition, trying to look through, trying to reach out to landowners and figure out ways that that could work. Better utilizing land for nature trails. We have, you mentioned Flagstaff Urban Trail System, which I think is a really good example of this. While Austin's is really focused on mobility and bicycling, which I think our staff's done a very good job on. They have a number of plans coming up. In Flagstaff, they've really tried to promote themselves as an ecotourism hub, tried to say, look at the number of trails. They've counted up all the trails, put it out on their tour, put it out there for people to come visit Flagstaff. And we have a number of trails already. Just a quick spreadsheet of it. I think I counted over 40, 50 miles within our city limits. But it's not really promoted, put together into one place, and then put out there for being the kind of trail city that we are. Improve accessibility for existing trails. We have a number of both for parking, but also for ADA accessibility, for pavement, for putting things in that would allow it to be more accessible, similar to what we did at Sweetwater Wetlands Park recently. Better utilize wayfinding and trail maps. If I remember right, Commissioner Willis, you mentioned that you recently found a trail that you had no idea existed, and that it was that we have a number of those all across, but it's kind of hard to know where things are, how to get to the various things. Expanding our wayfinding and really trying to think through how that could work in order for people to know how to get to these various trails and how they're interconnected. And then identify and expand trail amenities such as mountain biking and equestrian trails. Tallahassee does a very good job, I found, of they found areas where they could put mountain bike trails in, do different types of trail amenities that were in there. We don't really have any kind of mountain biking or equestrian trails within our city. And just identifying those, figuring out how to better utilize those for those uses, and then promoting those, I think, would go a long way on land that we basically already own. So that's essentially the request. I'm not really requesting a full-on outside trails master plan at the moment, just because of where we are as a city. I don't know if it's really necessary with the staff that's internal. I spoke with Andrew Persons before about this. You seem to think that the capacity is internal to, that we have the capacity to be able to come up with at least basic plans that would showcase where we would be doing acquisition and expanding out. And so I don't know if the full master plan like we've seen other cities do is necessary at the moment, but I do think that we need to be really thinking through where land's going to be coming and how we're going to expand out, creating, streamlining that structure, including park utilization, upcoming plans, and then exploring a partnership with Alachua Conservation Trust. If you had anything to add to that.
Mr. Mayor, I don't. I think, but I am. I do believe that with all the overlap that we have between the bike and pedestrian planning work that we're doing with the county and with UF, as well as internal staff, I think as long as the commission is okay with it not being super glossy and everything, if we're just looking for a potential areas of focus or for potential acquisition and connectivity, I think that's something that we could do in-house.
And I'm comfortable with that, particularly where we are with staff and staff time, not having a big to-do of a process, I think would probably get us into a good position, particularly because we have a lot of these plans in-house that have been happening over the years. They've just never been cobbled together into one place. And so that's my presentation. I'd be curious to hear what my fellow commissioners think about it. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
So before I see any other lights here, I will just weigh in that there are multiple reasons to have an extensive greenways process, an extensive greenways map, not only for recreation and transportation. Those are the obvious reasons, and recreation is always the first thing people talk about. Certainly, it brings out some opportunities for tourism as well. It absolutely creates opportunities for transportation that don't immediately leap to mind. But a big thing that we haven't talked about is that it provides some level of resiliency for the neighborhoods and flood control. Many days you could walk any of these creeks and they look like they're barely there. Even Hogtown Creek some days it looks like a little, a little backyard creek. But if you go out there right now, I'll promise you it feels like a river. And this is not the floodiest that it ever gets. So when we can acquire, when cities, municipalities in general can acquire land in a controlled, intentional sort of way, it keeps that land from inevitably being sold, where someone will inevitably build something on it that looks great and feels good and ought to be just fine until we get another one of those 100-year floods that we've been experiencing more and more often. And then not only do we all bear the burden of propping up the insurance system, we either help that homeowner, that property owner rebuild or restructure, or we all live with a derelict structure on the property. So it is absolutely at least the third equal benefit of a good greenway system, and potentially it outweighs the other uses to have that greenway system just as a resiliency buffer, so that we knowing that rain events are becoming more severe and knowing that we are becoming more dense as a community, maintaining these opportunities to intentionally pick up land when and where we can to maintain that flood protection and resiliency, I think is even more important than it has been in the past. So, Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward, even though it took the whole year. I'm glad you did. And before I move further, I want to compliment Mikhail on an excellent presentation. I was going to ask how many miles we have, but I think I heard you say 45. We're about 45 to 50 miles now. Okay. I like the idea of exploring the partnership with the Alachua Conservation Trust. That has proven to be a very, very beneficial collaboration for the county. And I don't know why we hadn't thought of it before, but I think it would be very beneficial to us. They are able to really acquire land, and I would like to see them take the leadership in doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Mr. Willits.
Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Eastman, for bringing this forward and sticking with it. And thank you, Mikhail, for all the work you did informing us about how it works in some other places and pros and cons. I think it's something that I was frankly a little surprised we didn't have a master plan, particularly for the kind of urban trails portion of this, because we're a pretty forward-thinking city about how we move people around, and we've always been a pretty bike-friendly city with the university going back decades. And as we look into the future about how people can, basically burn less fossil fuels, we talk a lot about bike and pedestrian, yet there's no place to point and say, when someone says, what is your plan for there to be fewer cars on the road taking up, burning as much gasoline? What's your plan? And technically, we don't have a place to point them at. We have individual plans within the Department of Transportation. With the MTPO, we can look at some of our there's a real priority list with MTPO. And of course, and that's hoping for state and federal dollars often into the future. But even locally for our trails, what is our highest priority? And I can't tell anybody what is our highest priority. What's the first thing we're going to go tackle? Where I spent a lot of my youth and into college in Fayetteville, Arkansas, their plan was laid out well in advance, partially because they passed a ballot measure that was very specifically said, we're also going to do trails, not just roads with this tax revenue. So people knew exactly what they were going to get, and it was very clear. These are the priorities, and they kind of went through them one at a time. And so I'm interested in having this so we can set priorities. I like the cities that lay out some sort of a criteria so they can rank them. Because even though I may want, it may be that I may want Hogtown Creek Greenway, but if there's a quarter mile that we can finish somewhere that connects up for transportation, And if that rises in the rankings, I think that's really beneficial. So we can look at those things and we can achieve. Like most things, there's multiple goals here. It's not just transportation, and there's recreation, and there's just some preservation of land that is useful for flood control and other natural benefits. So I think we need to have a master plan. The plans exist, and we cooperate between departments, Parks and Recreation and Transportation, and with the University of Florida and the county on some of these. And then we have great input from our citizen activists in our community, I think. But us deciding what our priority is, the city, I like the idea of getting towards this. So there's really, we can say, oh, this is the priority. This section of this trail, or this year we're going to be focusing on buying property because one of the greenways is our priority. So I think it's something we need, and I support moving us towards a master plan. I understand that right now might not be when we want to jump into a full process, but that we piece it together so that we can set some priorities, because there will be future federal bills that just drop money. COVID was not the only time. It happens. Future transportation bills may get far more generous with non-vehicular travel. And we should have, in essence, a shovel-ready plan to put that money towards. Or even the state of Florida may, start to do more. Or we may seek out dollars, that we think we can get from the state of Florida or other partners. So I think we should be prepared. And if we don't have it on paper and have a listed priority and have a backbone of a trail system, I think it's harder for us to take advantage of those opportunities when they come. So I support moving down this path. I think we should really have an actual true master plan. We do it for roads. I think we need to have the same consideration, particularly for the urban trails that people are going to use for transportation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do you have anyone from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I have Penny Weber.
Welcome, Ms. Weber.
Good afternoon, Commission. Penny Wilson Weber with Friends of Nature Parks. Commissioner Eastman, I am so excited about this presentation, which is why I came out in the rain today to see you all. With it, it's what we've kind of been talking about. So a couple of things. With the, I'm so glad that you put the statistically valid survey that was done for the community up there, because as you'll notice, the trails and walking paths was what the majority of the public wanted for wild spaces, public places money. When you look down at the much lower priorities at the bottom, that is your sports fields, that is your community buildings, that is recreational facilities. So I would really like to see the wild spaces, public places money. Everything's a great project. But could we tilt it in the direction as to where the community has come back with this second round of money and said, we need trails, we want green space, we want nature centers, and go ahead and put those in front of some of the buildings that we're doing. I'm going to transition to managing the property on these trails, because this is a big deal. I was here in the 80s when we were doing this. Gainesville has a lot of green space. I would love to have bicycle and walking trails going through the green space. A lot of the green space is environmentally sensitive areas, and that's complicated to work with. I myself am working with ACT on conservation land, and it took us 3 years to go through and get the federal monies to do this. I still have to go out and pull weeds and burn the property. It is not self-managing. So as the city of Gainesville accumulates more land, you've got to have boots on the ground to go in there and manage it. So please, keep that in mind. When you're doing the management right now, you have a team that is familiar with doing this, and that is your Nature Operations Division of 31 people that I work with. They pull weeds, they know what to kill, what not to kill, they do a wonderful job. I would encourage you to keep, if you're going to do this, keep this division intact, because they already know what they're doing, and it's not a ball field, it's not a roadway. Go ahead and keep them. And The manager that is in there does happen to be a phenomenal grant writer, acquired another 1,100 acres for the community, and knows how to work with fragile conservation lands. So I thank you. I am excited about this. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That concludes our speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Book.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just a couple of comments. So thank you, Commissioner Eastman, for talking about that and the work that goes back about 12 months. And even though our intern's gone back to class, thank him again for us, because every time we do a research project and they bring forward information, it kind of helps us inform what we might want to do in the future, so that's helpful. What makes me think is often merely having awareness of what already exists is the first step in figuring out what's needed. And so we know, like Commissioner Eastman, we've talked about that we have many miles of trails. We have greenways, we have bicycle trails and urban forests, and those are good. And I think a lot of that, at least the goal of those things and where we move forward on connectivity, is actually already in our Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Master Plan. The goals, in other words, those first few pages inform how we move forward. But I think what you're talking about is showing basically on a map where they are and how they connect. So basically, the outcome of those goals in that plan. It kind of makes me think we probably just need an inventory of what we already have before we move forward. So, many plans where there's a comprehensive plan. The bicycle Visit Gainesville has all kind of maps. There's a creek greenways map already. I think you probably had a reference to it on one of your slides that is online. And then we have the Alachua Conservation Trust, which is already mentioned, which has tremendous expertise. And Corda already has kind of a map for areas outside the city limits. So it makes me think from a staff perspective, I wouldn't be interested in significant staff and money time, and you've already addressed that, so I appreciate that at this time. But I think if we merely have an inventory, perhaps through Parks, Recreation, Cultural Affairs, Mr. Manager, of what exists, and all the existing plans that overlap, there's probably a tremendous amount of that already mapped. And the cobbled together, I think is the term you said, is probably, or maybe Commissioner Willits, you mentioned that, is probably a good term for that. And that's kind of where I would think we would be, is inventory all the existing overlapping plans, potentially like Commissioner Chestnut said, speak to the Alachua Conservation Trust and maybe formalize a little more of a partnership there, since they have such tremendous expertise that's even beyond our own city staff, and then work through the city managers off with Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs to see what we have, which would allow us to know, what this might look like. Those are just my comments, but thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Book. So let me point out just a few things that I think have kind of fallen through the cracks, and that I want us to be careful of. I would hate for us to pit trails, greenways, passive recreation sorts of things against active recreation, against planned recreation. We can't use stormwater funds to build a ball field. We can't use tree mitigation funds to build a community center. We can do those things with wild spaces. So let's be careful that we don't pit one activity against another. They're all things that need to be done, and there are a variety of funds out there to do with. I also want everybody to note that, the public to note that we are not talking about spending general fund resources on this. There are multiple dedicated resources that are available for the sort of thing we're talking about. We just have to be intentional about how we do it. We have had some of these build up over the years to a point where they're substantial funds that we simply have not activated. And we have a responsibility, I think, to be good stewards of those funds and use them for the purposes that they were intended for in the first place, which very often is purchasing land. It's not the only thing that something like the Tree Mitigation Fund exists for, but it is a thing that it exists for. And to be good stewards, we need to be putting the funds to what they were originally intended for. I would also point out that if funds become really, really large, then at some point they become very attractive for things that they may not have been intended for. And then we find ourselves trying to make a good case for using money in a different way that it was initially intended. Not unethical, not illegal, but just different than intended in the first place. So keeping all that in mind, we have opportunity here to be intentional about how we move forward, and I'm glad that we are. You mentioned briefly, Commissioner Eastman, that we do have an existing relationship with Electrical Conservation Trust specific to Split Rock Conservation Area. And we should, I think, expand that or consider how we might expand that to be able to outsource some of what we do directly to an organization that is very good at what it does and that does that very well with not only Alachua County but some of our surrounding counties at this point. Those of you who may not be familiar with the Alachua Conservation Trust, it is one of the premier rural land trusts, conservation land trusts in the nation. They really are a trendsetter. And I noticed on social media this morning that Tom Kay in the last few days celebrated 10 years of being executive director there. So congratulations, Mr. Kay. And congratulations to everyone who's part of ACT. I have been a contributor in the past. I think very highly of the organization, just for full transparency there. But they can be useful and helpful to us. And the more I think about the path that we are on as a city, the more I realize we can't do everything on our own. And we have got to depend on other organizations and build better partnerships and stronger partnerships rather than trying to do everything in-house. I love doing everything in-house, but we're a city of 145,000 people where half the property is off the tax rolls. We have to be very intentional and understanding about that moving forward. So, all right, does anybody want to make a motion? Okay. All right. Mr. Eastman.
Direct staff to create a plan for Greenway and Trail expansion, to create a structure for land acquisition for Creeks nature parks and greenways, to include plans for park utilization of trails in the upcoming PRCA master plan, and explore partnerships with Alachua Conservation Trust for added capacity.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for those 4 items. Commissioner Buck.
This would just be a question. Thank you for the motion, Commissioner Eastman. And so would kind of your motion entail the fact that we probably need to know what we have? In other words, let's figure out before we start directing staff to move forward with things, because there may be some existing resources, maps and things that would allow us to move forward. I'm just kind of getting some context for your motion.
I mean, I'm happy to do an inventory. Well, and Andrew, I see you click, but and this is all the things that I'm proposing here. I would love to take all the credit. I'm in politics, right? I mean, it's great, but we are, I sit on the shoulders of Hutch Hutchinson was head of ACT during the Hogtown Creek Greenway expansion. Our staff has done a great job of multi-use trail planning. We have always been a very environmentally conscious community. Most of the green space that we own kind of came out of that original Hogtown Greenway plan. That's why we have 29th Road, trails up here, a bunch of empty space before you get down to Alfred E. Ring Park. There is certainly a number of plans out there, and I doubt anything would be reinventing the wheel here. But when we were coming up with plans and looking forward and trying to figure out what expansion looks like, I think we moved forward in a much more intentional and focused way. It didn't mean that we weren't looking at other plans and things like that, but we were doing it intentionally instead of just sort of acquiring land as the bug hit us in the head with it, and we just said, okay, well, we'll acquire that whether it makes sense for our long-term recreational plans or not. And we did it in a way that the parks that we acquired during those time periods when we had those plans are still some of the most beloved nature trails that we have within our community. And so I do think that we need that. Certainly part of planning would be looking at what we have, but we have a lot of that down, and I do think that planning for what will come in the future is sort of what I'm requesting, and I think it would fit well. It could fit into the PRCA master plan that's coming up. I don't know if that would make sense because I know we're kind of near the end of that time period. But if that's not there, then there needs to be something that's saying, okay, well, what is our trail system going to look like in 30, 40, 50 years, so that we can kind of slowly piece this together over that time period.
Thank you. I would think it's kind of a natural thing to think trail expansion. But once you look at where the trails are and what the Conservation Trust has in the existing plans, it may not involve trail expansion. Now, I do believe it would. But the reality is that's why you look at what's in it, that you kind of get with Parks and Recreation and Cultural Affairs, and you determine, because that's an outcome right there. And I think what we're looking for is, yes, let's work to see what we have, what would that plan look like. But I see that, and that's actually directing, say, we're going to expand. I'm not sure we are. It's probably a very likely outcome. So that just kind of gave me a little bit of pause when I saw that on the slide. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, I guess I'd say I guess what my request here is that it is a goal of saying that our community asked for more trails, and we would give them more trails either on existing land that we own or on long-term acquisition. There's a couple of parcels I kind of pointed out there. I don't like to go too much into exact which parcels you're looking at, because suddenly the price goes up quite a bit when you start pointing out exact parcels. But I mean, there's some that are very easy, low-hanging fruits, and then there's like your AAA, these are the ones we need to acquire, and then there's stuff that's like, well, what are we going to decide to do here in the future? And that would be up to staff. I don't, I have opinions about it, but I am not in nature operations, nor in Parks, Recreation, Cultural Affairs, nor in the mobility. And this is sort of crosses all those certain portions of it.
I would also point out that if we put if we rank our expansion preferences and get the whole map together and get that list, that's a 20 or 30-year project. It's not, we're all not going to be here if we ever got to the end of that list. But it is it's something that you put out there for the community to work on as an intentional goal for the city of Gainesville over the long term. So, all right, I don't see any other lights. So all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Our next item is 2023-573, interlocal agreement between Alachua County and the City of Gainesville for the acquisition of the trunk radio system, with the recommendation that the General Policy Committee approve and the mayor sign the interlocal agreement between Alachua County and the City of Gainesville for the acquisition of the trunk radio system, subject to form and legality of the city attorney.
So, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, as Louis Walton is making his way to the podium, you all are well aware we've been working with the county actually for several years on the potential purchase and sale of the trunk radio system. In March 2nd, in fact, you all voted for us to move forward with that sale. We've been working very diligently since that time with them, with legal, to put together an agreement. Today, Louis is gonna walk us through a little bit of the progress of that, but we also wanted to really solidify the terms more than just the general high-level terms of the terms of what that's going to look like. And if you look in your backup, it even has asset register type of thing and more detail. So what we wanted to do today is we'll bring this to you for approval of an interlocal agreement. It'll go to the county commission on Tuesday for the county commission to do that. And then what we anticipate is later this year, probably in August, we'll come back with a final purchase and sale agreement of the trunk radio system. So with that, I'll let Louis go through the presentation and be available to answer any questions.
Welcome, Mr. Walton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. As Tony said, we've made a lot of progress to this point from the last time we were here. I'm sure that you recall that back in March of this year, we came before you to discuss the potential sale of the public safety radio system, and it's also known as a trunked radio system. We were looking to sell that to Alachua County as they were a willing participant there. At the time, we asked the Commission to allow staff to work with Alachua County to develop an agreement for the sale of the system, which you approved. We're back here today to outline our progress to date and ask for affirmation of the terms we've negotiated as we continue to work towards a final deliverable of a purchase sale agreement for the formal sale of the system to Alachua County. So today I'll go over a couple of things: the basic history of what started this process, some of the fundamentals of what we discussed back in March, along with the directions approved by both county and city commissions, the progress we've made to date, along with the fundamental terms we have included in this interim step of the interlocal agreement before you. And finally, staff's recommendation on this item. So first, let's go over what got us moving on this path to considering sale of the system to Alachua County. In January of 22, Board of County Commissioners Chair Mary Helen Wheeler sent a letter to the Lauren Poe, indicating an interest in purchasing the system. The county had a primary desire to expand the system at the time into more rural areas of the county. In February, the mayor agreed to discuss the options that would be beneficial to both parties and continue to advance our shared responsibility of public safety communications throughout the city and the county. Since then, the county and city staff have been in discussions to find a solution that would be good for both parties and ensure continued reliable operations and service continuity for our shared communities. And I think those are the values that you're going to see represented throughout this, and what has been our experience in working with the Alachua County staff through this process. When we talked last back in March, there were some good reasons to consider a sale to the county. Our initial arrangement from 1999 really was an odd arrangement that got in the way of comprehensive planning and funding for the system, and we experienced that as we tried to own and operate the system. The original agreement had expired, and there was uncertainty of having no agreement in place and no way to plan for public safety communications that are critical in today's world. There were some real opportunities for GRU and the city in considering a sale based on terms that have been discussed with the county. We'll talk in more detail about those benefits in the next slide. So here is where we can see the results of our discussions and the benefits that result from the sale. Here are the county's approved items from the February BOCC meeting that represents benefits to the city, and then the city's subsequent direction to continue with discussions with the county. First, the county would pay the city $8 million for the existing equipment for the system to operate. That $8 million will go to reduce GRUCOM debt. Second, GRU and the city would continue to make fixed payments for service for 5 years, but at a reduced rate during 3 of the 5 years. Overall, GRU and the city would have paid $5.505 million minimum if there was no deal, but they will pay $4.944 million with the deal for a savings of $561,000 over that term. In addition, GRU will save another $1.4 million in O&M annually with a deal for an overall savings of $7 million in O&M over that term, plus the $561,000 that I mentioned under the new terms for a grand total of around $7.5 million, almost $7.6 million. GRUCOM will also continue to produce revenue for the network services, tower leasing, and co-location leasing with the county to provide those services to the county through their ownership. With all the parties being comfortable with the proposed and approved terms, city and county staff have been meeting regularly to get to this point of affirming this interlocal agreement. The financial terms and savings have remained the same as initially agreed and are included in the interlocal agreement we are discussing today. We have also confirmed many other logistical issues regarding the sale and have included those fundamentals in the document, while maintaining flexibility to continue work on the finer points of an agreement. Both parties are now in a position to get affirmation from our respective governing bodies prior to the more detailed purchase-sale agreement that we will bring back to the Commission for final approval prior to closing. Now let's look at some of those fundamental terms that are included in the interlocal. First, the purchase price. The county would acquire the assets free and clear of debt for $8 million. New user agreements. Parties shall enter into new user agreements, which agreements shall be effective October 1st of 2023, which will be the effective date of the sale and closing. GRU shall pay the county $164,000 per year for the initial 5 years. Concurrently, the city shall pay the county $937,000 per year for the initial 2 years and $750,000 per year for the following 3 years. That indicates the $561,000 in savings I'd mentioned earlier. Co-location agreements. At or prior to the closing, parties shall enter into co-location agreements to allow the county to co-locate system equipment. We've been really successful in walking the county through this and developing the terms that will be used for that. They do intend to remain in most of our facilities and to to continue to take service for us for the communications between the system. And the deadline for the execution of purchase and sale agreement, the parties agreed that they shall use their best efforts to execute a purchase and sale agreement no later than August 31st of 2023. And then the closing date, the parties agreed that the closing and consummation of the transaction shall take place no later than September 30th of 2023, and that the effective date of the transfer shall be October 1st of 2023. First, I'd like to, for a couple of things, I want you to understand that we have worked throughout, kind of across the lines here within city government. I want to really appreciate the legal side with Dan Nee and Bianca Larison. Chief Lonnie Scott helped us get through this, along with Ms. Sue Wong. The city manager, Ms. Curry, has provided us support all the way through this. And I'd also like to thank the county staff and leadership, as they've been very supportive, forthcoming. This has been a really smooth process to date, and we've enjoyed fleshing these things out. Everything's pretty much remained the same there. That concluded my presentation with the exception of providing staff's recommendation. And staff's recommendation is that the City Commission approve the interlocal agreement between Alachua County and the City of Gainesville for the acquisition of the trunked radio system, subject to form and legality by the city attorney. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. So this is substantially little or no difference from what we saw back in March. So, okay.
This is true. There were some other more specific terms we were able to work out. The co-location agreements, some of the timing issues, making sure the inventory was correct, and that we had a process to go through and evaluate that. So more logistical issues than anything else, but the fundamentals have remained the same as what I stood here and told you on March 2nd. Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't see any lights. So anyone from the public signed up? Okay. Commission?
Mr. Mayor, I move staff's recommendation that we approve the interlocal agreement between Alachua County and the City of Gainesville for the acquisition of the trunk radio system, subject to form and legality by the city attorney.
Thank you, Commissioner Willis. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move staff recommendation. I see no other lights, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you,
Thank you,
Walton.
Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item is 2023-580, amendment to the GRU FY24 budget calendar with a recommendation that the General Policy Committee approve the proposed amendment to the GRU FY24 budget calendar.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, so we had, at the end of July, we had two meetings scheduled. On the July 24th, we were going to go over the operation and maintenance budget for GRU, and then July 30th, we're going to go over the capital budget for GRU. What we're doing now is combining both of those into one presentation on the 24th, and then we're leaving the 31st as a placeholder for potentially follow-up discussions or following up. So we just wanted to amend it so that we hit both of those topics in one meeting, and then we have more time if we have questions and things like that to follow up. So that's just an amendment to the budget calendar to do that.
Very good. That's administrative. I'm not sure we even need a motion for that, but.
Well, yeah, that was my question. I don't like tying up staff with, bring things for us. I know that kind of adds extra hoops for you guys to leap into. Did we originally vote on this at some point? Is that why you're bringing it back to us?
Yes, we did. There's no reason not to go ahead and vote.
I agree with you. As a rule of thumb, it's nice to not have, I know that it takes time to get it on the agenda, move that forward, and so.
So, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, yes, we typically, both the city manager and I, each bring our budget calendars at the beginning of the season so that we establish those meeting dates on the calendar and plan those way out in advance. And so since we modified the topic, we felt that it was important to bring it back.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cunningham, just because I can't find the whole calendar at this point, would those be meetings or workshops?
Both of those, I believe, will still be workshops, and then we will have a a special meeting in early August that will be the actual one for a vote from the commission on our final
Okay.
budget.
Thank you for clarifying that, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacco.
Mr. Mayor, I motion to approve the proposed amendment to the GRU 24 budget calendar.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second to follow staff recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
O, outside counsel regarding House Bill 1645, with a recommendation that the General Policy Committee authorize the expenditure of a sum not to exceed $250,000 payable in response to monthly billing invoices for fees and costs related to legal service rendered by outside counsel providing legal advice in connection with analyzing and potentially litigating the impact of HB 1645 on the City of Gainesville, and direct such funds to be sourced by the GRU Utility System Reserves Fund.
All right, Mr. Attorney, that seems fairly straightforward, but do you want to weigh in on it?
Really nothing to add, Mr. Mayor. This is our item following through on the direction from March of the commission that authorized and directed us to seek outside counsel to assist in analyzing and potentially litigating the effects of House Bill 1645. We have counsel on board with the Ackerman firm. They are working away as we speak. And now it's just a matter of the commission directing where the funds should come from, and set a number, to be fair, rather just picked a threshold level that makes sure that we come back to you to keep you apprised, but that is understanding of the complexity and the potential expense of the litigation, if it comes to that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, from the general manager's perspective, these are funds that we don't have currently available, so we would use reserves for these funds. Because of that, and because this is, from my perspective, a one city initiative of seeking the outside counsel to challenge the bill, my recommendation would be to do it from the cost allocation plan that we have in place for things that come into the city, and it allocates the cost between general government and GRU. That's my perspective. I just wanted to share that, and just to clarify that we don't have the funds available. It will come from reserves as well.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. Yeah, I am liable to approve of what our city attorney put forward, and I hear what Mr. Cunningham's saying. I think, and I do think it's a shame that we have to expend these funds. I don't feel like we have much of a choice. I mean, I feel like our residents spoke very clearly in 2018 when they rejected the previous GRU authority by 60%. If our residents spoke with a different voice at a different referendum, then I would feel like perhaps we would be listening to the will of the people, and a GRU authority may be what the way we would go forward. But I think our residents spoke very clearly when they rejected this by huge margins not that long ago. And so because that is the will of the community, and because there's been nothing that says anything different, I feel like that we have a responsibility to our constituents to use these funds and to ensure that their will is and their voice is heard in regards to this legislation. So I'll be supporting staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move staff's recommendation and say that at this time, I think that this is the proper fund source. And so I support the motion, and I'll just restate it if you'd like, is that the General Policy Committee authorized the expenditure of a sum not to exceed $250,000 payable in response to monthly billing invoices for fees and costs related to legal service rendered by outside counsel providing legal advice in connection with analyzing, potentially litigating the impact of House Bill 1645 on the City of Gainesville, and direct such funds to be sourced from the GRU Utility System Reserves Fund.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say from the city attorney's perspective, I thank you very much for the way this was written. It's very nuanced. And what it really talks about, I think this is important for the record, is analyzing and potentially litigating. It basically says, take a look at the statutory authority, the manner in which the bill is crafted, and move forward. So I just want to thank the city attorney for the manner in which you analyze it to this point, which allows us then to potentially move forward with the motion. So thank you, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. And I would remind everyone that we already took the action to direct the city attorney's office to hire outside counsel. What this does is explain from what bucket we will pay for it. And it is not a general government function. If we had reserves and unrestricted funds lying about in the city attorney's budget, then that would be appropriate. We do not, and it is specifically a utility function, so I lean in that direction as well. And as Commissioner Book alluded, we may not have to do anything more than what we have already done, which is engage with outside counsel. This has not become law at this point. The governor has the opportunity to listen to the people of Gainesville and Alachua County and veto this bill. That is still an option. And if that happens, we don't spend this money, any of it. We don't know exactly what we will spend if we did move forward. And what we're doing here is a not to exceed figure. We're not guaranteeing that we're going to spend $250,000. But again, the governor can save us from having to spend any of this money by vetoing that bill, and I, for one, hope that that is the path that our state goes down. So, anyone from the public signed up for this one?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, our next item is 2023-547, Gun Violence Action Plan and Task Force discussion, with the recommendation that the General Policy Committee hear a presentation from staff and discuss.
Welcome back.
Hello again, Mayor and Commissioners. Morgan Spicer, Policy Oversight Administrator, and I am here today to provide you all with a bit of an update on some previous direction that was given by the Commission related to gun violence prevention, and then share some updates from discussions that have come out of the Public Safety Committee regarding the potential creation of a gun violence action plan and task force. So just starting off with a reminder of what you all have voted on. At the February 2nd, 2023 Commission meeting, there was the following motion that was approved, which is that gun violence be declared as a public health crisis and that the City of Gainesville draft a resolution to that effect, authorizing the mayor to draft a letter to the County Commission asking them to declare gun violence a public health crisis, mirror the resolution of the city, and then partner with efforts in regards to preventing gun violence. Advancing and laying a foundation for convening a gun violence task force, and then asking staff to bring back ways that they can expand or tailor programs that we already do in the city to specifically address gun violence. And so as a result of that, it was requested by the Public Safety Committee that we put together a draft gun violence action plan outline to help lay out the steps that the city and other institutional partners can take to achieve the points outlined in the previous motion, and also just work towards a sort of unified effort towards gun violence prevention in the Gainesville and Alachua County region. And so this draft outline was discussed at last week's Public Safety Committee, so I'll go over this briefly, and it is in your backup as well. The first and second points are just in line with the motion that we just discussed, which is that the city pass a resolution declaring gun violence a public health crisis, and then the county mirror that resolution. That resolution has been drafted, but it has not yet been brought to a full city commission meeting and voted on. The third point is also already in the works by the communications team, which is that the City of Gainesville establish a website presence related to gun violence prevention efforts to share information and opportunities for involvement. The next point is really the bulk of what we'll discuss, which is the potential convening of a gun violence action plan, or excuse me, gun violence task force. But the purpose of that task force would be to establish a gun violence action plan. Because gun violence is obviously a very robust area that hits a lot of different topics, there are a couple of specific potential focus areas for that task force, including focuses on youth opportunity, expanded healthcare and mental health care, crisis management systems, education, and law enforcement. That's not necessarily meant to be an exhaustive list, but New York City does have a blueprint to end gun violence, and they sort of separate their vision into those different topics. So that's sort of where that comes from. And then, of course, gun violence is, again, a robust topic, so there are a variety of partners that were identified in this effort, many of whom were at the previous Public Safety Committee last week. This includes a variety of different Alachua County partners, such as the Board of County Commissioners, the Health Department, the County Manager, the School Board, the Superintendent, and the Sheriff's Office. Of course, offices within the City of Gainesville, like the Community Resource Paramedicine Program and the Police Department, Children's Trust, HCA North Florida Hospital, Interrupters, One Nation, One Project, the Randall VA Hospital, Santa Fe College, UF and Shands, and then, of course, it's not intended to be an exhaustive list, and there would be other community groups involved. The next step is the creation of a gun violence action plan based on those task force recommendations that contains explicit data collection metrics, and then institutional partners entering into interlocal agreements as necessary to affirm the commitments outlined in the action plan. And so at the Public Safety Committee last week, there were some questions brought up about what a task force might look like and what it might mean to establish a task force. The city has really not extensively used task forces in the past. Obviously, the primary items that we use are commission committees like Public Safety Committee and then our advisory boards for neighbors. And so do just want to point out that there are a couple of groups that we want to consider moving forward in this effort. Of course, the Public Safety Committee, and then we also have the Police Advisory Council, with the role of, acting as an advisor in an advisory capacity for the police department to bring their attention to feedback from the community concerning public safety issues, and then also the Black on Black Crime Task Force, which is meant to serve as a space for community members to learn and provide input on solutions and resources related to crime reduction. So do just want to, at the start, kind of make sure you all are aware of those different groups. So starting off with just some general best practices regarding developing a multi-sector task force, making sure that the goals and actions of the task force are clear from the start so that the group knows what they're meant to be working towards, determining the institutional leader of the task force, and this would likely be the leader that would be responsible for staffing and providing authority to the task force. There was interest at the Public Safety Committee expressed in the city being that institutional leader, but that would certainly be a decision that would need to be made. Defining the relationship of the task force to that institutional leader, whether they operate entirely independently, whether they need to come back to that institutional leader frequently for resources or just for updates. Of course, designating the chair and staffing capacity of the task force, identifying who you would like to participate in the task force, and then recruiting members. This can look a couple of different ways, which we'll discuss. It might be direct appointment by the mayor, the city manager, with no official applications, or it could be more similar to our advisory board process, where there is a formal application and then the commission appoints members. And then, of course, gathering the group, setting expectations, and potentially establishing subcommittees, as again, this is a topic that spans many different fields. So there is a report in your all's backup on gun violence task force structures in general, and so this is just a summary of what most of them tend to look like. So for creation, it is very typical for these to be formally created by city ordinance or resolution or executive order in the case that the city has a strong mayor, with the kind of goal of establishing the purpose, membership, governing rules, meeting frequency, and staffing of these task forces on the front end. Leadership, the chair, and there are typically chairs and vice chairs of these task forces. However, they can either be appointed by the council chair or the mayor or elected by the task force as a whole. For membership and appointment, again, as mentioned, some just have the mayor or the city manager appoint members and there's no formal application process, but others do open up membership, have individuals apply. Potentially they have membership requirements, like ask that people be of certain backgrounds or have certain expertise, and then they would be subject to commission appointment. And then the numbers of members varied pretty significantly. I think the lowest we saw was 9 and saw upwards of 37, and some don't actually specify an exact number. So there's quite a bit of range there. Most of these task forces meet monthly, and most do have subcommittees with a variety of common topics like schools and education, firearms, health and mental health, social services, domestic violence, and sexual assault being a few. And then generally, there is some reporting provision outlined in these task force structures that require regular progress updates, annual progress updates, some sort of end goal, such as the creation of an action plan, and things of that nature. And I'll also note, sometimes these task forces will be given a specific date for dissolution. That might be 6 months to a year after creation, or they might say, you need to complete a report within 6 months, and then that's sort of the end goal of the task force. So not all of these task forces are sort of permanent. So the report outlines a few different examples, and I think we're going to talk about 3 today. Starting out with New York City, they created their gun violence prevention task force in June of 2022. With the goal of learning more about communities that are impacted by gun violence and sort of inventory existing programs and services and make recommendations for expansions. This was created by executive order of the mayor of New York City, and the members were directly appointed by the mayor. I will, of course, note that New York City is a strong mayor system, and the task force was co-chaired by the deputy mayor for strategic initiatives and 1 community representative. The task force had a very diverse selection of representation. City agencies were very well represented, community safety leaders from a variety of sectors like nonprofit, academic, and philanthropic. And then the task force meets weekly and regularly shares updates with the mayor. And one interesting note about New York City's is that each city agency is responsible for appointing a liaison to the task force to serve as that primary point of contact. Next is Roanoke, Virginia, which created their Gun Violence Prevention Commission by ordinance in March of 2021 with the intention of studying the issue of gun violence and recommending reduction strategies. Their commission has 9 members. 1 of them is a member of the city council. The remaining are community members, and then the mayor serves as an ex officio non-voting member. And they do have a formal application process for membership for this Gun Violence Prevention Commission. They have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary, all of which are elected by the body as a whole. And then they have a regular monthly meeting schedule and are required by that ordinance to present back to the city council once per calendar year. And then the last example that we'll talk about is Orange County, Florida, which created a citizen safety task force first in 2020, and then it was reconvened in 2021 and 2022. It was created by the Orange County mayor to brainstorm strategies to prevent gun violence. They are one of the larger task forces. They have 37 members, all of which appointed by the mayor, representing a variety of different community groups like the faith-based community, health professionals, community advocates, education, law enforcement, and service-based organizations. The 2 co-chairs were chosen by the mayor, and they did have 4 different subcommittees on prevention, intervention, enforcement, and prosecution. And a staff liaison was dedicated to each committee to assist with scheduling, agenda, minute production, and then scheduling of presentations. The task force did produce a report and recommendations, and then also conducted a crime survey on perceptions of violence and safety. So that's what I have for you today. I think the Public Safety Committee's intention was to get some feedback from the Commission on steps moving forward, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Mr. Dr. Walker, you want to lead us off there?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Morgan, for a really nice presentation. I want to start by thanking all of you, my colleagues, because you unanimously have agreed that we are going to address and attack gun violence from a public health perspective. And that gives us a broad range of opportunities, I believe, to really bring partners to the table in a really robust, intentional, and meaningful way. I am pleased to report that for anybody who was not present at our most recent public safety meeting, that the room was pretty much full of a lot of individuals who intend to be among our partners and who have expressed to me that they'd love to sit on a task force. Morgan has listed in the presentation a number of the individuals who were there. We had the president of Santa Fe, we had the CEO of HCA North Florida, we had the sheriff's office, we had the deputy sheriff, and who else? We had Chad Scott. We had the Children's Trust that was present, who has said that they are already poised to want to provide some sort of financial contribution to these efforts, and on and on and on. But I will say that it is a goal that I believe we should have to really operationalize how we address gun violence. We have to be very, very intentional. And the police department is doing that from the policing standpoint. This is the opportunity for the community to come to the table. And that's why I'm very, very excited about how we are able to pull in, galvanize, create some synergy amongst institutional partners, nonprofits, individuals who all know that this has to be an all hands on deck approach. So these task forces have been convened throughout the country. We're noticing a rise in the number of gun violence prevention task forces and even offices throughout cities across this country. And it's almost a morbid thought, but the reality is that is where we are. And until we get a firm grip around this and start to see the number of violence go down, we'll have the need for more task forces. I'm really interested and excited to hear from all of you about how you would like for us to move forward in this space. I see Chief Jones back in the back. I also see Chief Scott back in the back. I would like to ask, because there is just a wealth of knowledge and experience firsthand, if Chief Jones might not mind coming forward and talking a little bit about some of the conversations that we've had in terms of what some of the task forces that are not too far from us. Morgan gave us an example. Orange County is a task force that we've discussed. It's one of the larger task forces, and I will be very candid in sharing with you right off the top, I don't mind a large task force on something like this. I think it almost has to be large because the idea is meaningful community engagement. The community has to absolutely be in the driver's seat on a lot of this work. So, Chief, I will stop talking for a moment. If you wouldn't mind, would you do this for us, Chief? Just for context.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Would you tell us in just a couple of stats where the city of Gainesville is in terms of our situation in gun violence? Where are we? And where do we rank in the state?
As far as ranking in the state, I'm gonna leave that to Chief Scott.
Absolutely.
But
Chief Scott
I'm
can
gonna
do
leave
either
that
one.
to Chief Scott. As far as task force, I did speak before Orange County Task Force 2 weeks ago. They wanted to know what we were doing in Gainesville, Florida. They wanted to know as far as what we were doing about gun violence. It was a very interesting task force. I understand they wrapped up yesterday, and they're bringing their recommendations to Orange County Commission in the very near future.
Excellent. Can you talk to us about any other task forces? You've been around for a long time. You got a lot of relationships.
Been around. Jacksonville,
Yes.
definitely, with their previous mayor, have a task force where they worked in addressing gun violence. It's very near and dear to me. It's where my family is. And so I was very pleased that Duval County is doing that, and they're in the process of evaluating some of the data that they have had over the years. Of course, New York City with Mayor Adams, I've been very familiar with what they're doing up in the New York City area. So a lot of communities are moving in that because they're trying to make a holistic approach, bringing citizens, law enforcement, different people from not only the criminal justice system, academic, faith-based. It's a community issue, and it's going to take a community to resolve some of the violence that we are experiencing in the United States. And so that's what they're doing. But as far as locally where we rank that and stuff, I think the current chief would be more appropriate to come up and talk about that.
For sure. Chief, would you mind doing that? That'll kind of give us a little bit of context. We know that, it's an issue that needs to be resolved. Thank you, Chief Jones, for sharing your experiences firsthand. I thought it was important to do that because there is a wealth of institutional knowledge that we have in-house that we can draw on. You have been there, done that. And also, Chief, just to make it clear, the reason that I called you is because this is the community approach. The Gainesville Police Department has its own approach as well, but that is specifically why I called you to speak to the task forces. Thank you very much. Chief Scott?
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. As far as where we rate today with the violent crime in comparison with the state, none of the statistics are in. We report that mid-year. That will come in. We report it in at the end of this month. But typically that information isn't available until the fall, late fall. The state runs behind in accumulating that data. Just anecdotally, looking at where we are with gun violence, I think this region, and really the state as a whole, has seen a serious increase in the amount of gun violence. We have different episodes of folks shooting at one another. We have, right now, as far as our homicide rate for this year, we're about on par of where we were last year. Another component that's going to make comparison a little more difficult is that this year the state switched, really the nation, switched to a new accounting method for reporting crime. They went to what's called NIBRS, which is National Incident-Based Reporting System, and Florida tweaked it and they call it FIBRS, which is the Florida Incident-Based Reporting System. So they have different demands. Those numbers will not comport with the UCR data. UCR was a Uniform Crime Report, so that data was collected in a different manner, and it wasn't incident-based, it was victim-based. So we have to try to comport those numbers to come up with a true analysis of where we are and how we compare with other areas in the city and really, in the area, as well as the state and country.
But we have seen an increase.
We have seen an increase in the number. We keep some statistics that we compare the number of shooting incidents. We keep that on a monthly basis where we record the number of gunshots that we respond to, that we verify, the number of people that have been shot, the number of homicides. And we've seen a slight increase in that this year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Chief. Just a little bit of a sidebar. I've always been interested in the idea of what we verify, because just in a little bit of research that I'm seeing, this new technology is rising now, right? Where unfortunately, some individuals who don't use guns in the right way have now devices, from what I understand, that catch shell casings.
Yeah.
And so it makes your job a little bit harder to verify some of these incidences, because when you go out on some of these scenes now, you can't find the shells because they're being picked up.
We don't rely solely on the shell casing, although that's the primary.
Mm-hmm.
We have video or witnesses, sometimes bullet holes, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to have some credible evidence that a gunshot has occurred and that somebody was shot at or something was shot at.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
I just wanted that, colleagues, just to kind of put us back in the mind frame and give us a little bit of context for the work that we're entering into, and the fact that how we approach it is critical. Not only all hands on deck, but really trying to utilize just about every methodology that we possibly can to address this, I think is really, really important. So just a couple of things before hopefully I'll hear from some of you is I'm really hoping that we can embed this in the way that we do business or in the way that we work in municipal government. We have a willing partner in Alachua County who's coming on board with us. How they will is yet to be determined, but really operationalizing our anti-violence work is something that I am committed to. The other thing that I'd like to share with you is I'm really hoping that we will move towards a robust complement of city and county residents on whatever task force we form, something that pulls together institutional partners, but also that meaningfully pulls in community organizations and nonprofits and individuals, and that centers and provides leadership opportunities for youth and young people. That's something that's really important for me. As I've looked at one of the task forces in particular in New York, we know that Gainesville is not nearly the size of New York, but they're doing some pretty incredible work there in terms of how they are addressing gun violence, and they center the youth. There are youth ambassadors, so to speak. And what I have found in my youth with work, where I work with youth in inner cities such as Liberty City, is when you give them leadership opportunities is really when you see them shine. So I'd love to see us create space on this task force for young people. We do need to have a conversation about the most effective format through ordinance or resolution, and I'm sure our city attorney can give us some guidance there. But I want to stop talking now and hear from you all about your ideas for the Gun Violence Task Force, and I thank you once again.
Hey, Commissioner Duncan Walker, Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for championing this particular gun violence initiative. I would think that everybody would be on board with any comprehensive efforts to trump safety over everything. And we've talked about a lot of big issues. We can talk about things like comprehensive plan and land use and budget and what happens with the utilities, but safety trumps all. So starting with that means you do have to take some significant efforts. A little interesting, I actually was going to ask for the context. The reason I actually weighed in, Mr. Mayor, was to ask for the context from the Safety Committee. So you provided that. And then the second thing, which you already asked for, was what was the information from our law enforcement leaders there. So just a couple of random thoughts as it relates to task forces. Just the term task force may not be something to consider, may not be the most effective way to deal with gun violence in isolation at the moment, because merely standing up a task force takes time and effort and partners where everybody's already doing some things. Clearly the work needs to be done. There's no doubt about that. I'm not sure the task force would be as quick and operational as you may be considering. I know that we have, that's one thought. The other thing is that the Black on Black Crime Task Force, just a few years ago, they didn't have a task force, but what they had was several committees that looked task force-like, and they produced some reports, and it was specific to gun violence. So specifically from a background perspective, that may be something that we want to get from the Black on Black Crime Task Force, because they did a lot of work that was specific to prevention of gun violence and had some ideas and partners, and they put it together. It may be a little dated, though. That would be my only concern there. And then just kind of one other piece is this conference, I think, is really a terrific idea that's coming up. And it may be, Mayor Pro Tem, that you want to use that as the springboard to identify who are those partners. In other words, the conference, and you may already be ahead of me by 5 steps, because I know it's kind of difficult for us to talk together unless we're up here. But it appears to me that depending upon what's in your idea, that's really the springboard for identifying your partners and probably having them provide information right there is what's already being done. It's kind of the same thing we talked about on the Trails Master Plan. The inventory of what's being done is probably pretty extensive, and yet it's not enough. Right? And that would also allow you to use the ideas that come out of there potentially in work groups, depending upon what the format of that conference. So those are just a few ideas with no particular resolution there as it relates to what you're doing. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I serve on the Public Safety Committee along with Commissioner Sacco and our Mayor Pro Tem. We didn't have a full complement of our committee at this last meeting to really discuss this. However, what I'm seeing here, from hearing from the Black on Black Crime Task Force, the Police Advisory Board, Orlando, and New York, is that they're all community-based. And I think that if we have it community-based, let it rise up from the ground instead of us trying to impose it from the top. I think we might have a look at perhaps a better resolution if more people are involved. I am concerned that if we're looking for city staff to take on and staff a task force, that we have a heavy workload already. That concerns me greatly. If the Children's Trust is interested in putting money in this, then maybe the Children's Trust would be the agency to chair this, to take it on. We haven't heard from the Alachua County Commission yet. As of last week, they have not written a letter saying what their commitment will be. I am just concerned that if we keep piling on stuff for our staff, that we're at a point where we're cutting back. We don't have the staff, and I would like to see this idea fully fleshed out with the full complement of the Public Safety Committee. Your idea, Commissioner Book, is that if this is thrown to the community at the forum, that might be an idea, but I think at this point, I could not support saying that this is something that the City of Gainesville staff will be responsible for. I'd like to see it as a community-based, community coming from the community, and with perhaps I'd really like to see the Children's Trust take it on. I don't think that this is something for the Black on Black Crime Task Force, because all gun violence is not black on black. But again, that is a community-based. That is a community-based committee with the faith community at the table, the nonprofits at the table, a wide variety of people at the table. It's not dependent on city staff and city staff trying to staff it, trying to do all of the work of that committee. That's where I am. But as I said, I'd like to see the full Public Safety Committee flesh this out.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Willits.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm glad you talked about youth, because as I listen to how other communities do this and who's appointed and potential partners here, that's one of the things I was looking at is sometimes the work of our community is done by the adults in the room, and a lot of our partners, by all means, they are adults. They're well experienced. They have many decades of experience in our community. But younger people whose experience is probably more personally connected to gun violence, because we know from our statistics that it skews young, both the perpetrators and the victims, and particularly the expanded circles of victims, right, outside of someone who might actually be physically harmed. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I have that same concern about how we incorporate people who are closer to it, because despite the word task force not being a very sexy word, it does lay out that it's a goal and a job of a larger community. And I think when we empower people to say, to some degree, though it is our job at the city through our police force to ensure safety, we know, particularly when we look at it as a public health thing, it's the job, the responsibility has to be spread out through the community so that more stakeholders take that on as their task. And when we expand that to the youth, we do it really well when we talk about environmental things. We talk about involving the next generation to start their activity now because they're important now, but particularly as they grow into being leaders. And with the University of Florida here, a lot of what happens is University of Florida and Santa Fe students, they learn and they become leaders here, and they go off into the rest of the world, in our community and elsewhere. But particularly for this issue about how we develop leaders here locally, youth just have connections and ties deep into our community, and our GPD relies on those youth to dig deeper into community than perhaps they can immediately, definitely more than we can up here. So I like that idea of, as Commissioner Chestnut said, like a community base of this, a little more organic, to help us identify who should be on it, because I think sometimes, even though a task force of 29 people seems big, or 17, those people will take on more of the role in the effort. So I like that idea. And of course, if Children's Trust wants to, if they think that this is a place where their interests and the interests of the voters, and I would argue that at least I know when I voted for Children's Trust, that this would fall in line with what I voted on as a voter, because it does affect children. And so I think it'd be a very valid thing to continue to communicate with Children's Trust. So Commissioner Chestnut, I appreciate the idea that it may not be something that we as the city will staff and be the absolute leader on it, because it might be a bigger community project. But I do think that we should, if the idea is to, as Mayor Pro Tem Duncan Walker said, operationalize it, then yeah, it's something we need to bring on as a task force, because the task is never done probably, and to make sure that it's something that is continuous. There are always going to be people and organizations that cycle in and off of it, but that doesn't mean as they cycle off, they're still leaders in our community, particularly youth is what I'm thinking of. So I like the idea that it's something that is constant, and it brings information back to us. It reminds us, it identifies best practices that I'm sure we have on the police side, but perhaps not on that community health side, and things that come organically from the community. So I like the idea of where this is going. I don't know where we'll be at with a full motion, but I know that it's going to take a lot more people than just our police forces to help bend the statistics back down to where we need them to be. So thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willett. So I have a lot of thoughts to share. And first, I will say that it is always ironic, if not entirely Kafkaesque, that we have conversations about gun violence while pretending that guns aren't the problem. But this being Florida, that is what it is, and we are preempted from passing any rule, ordinance, or law relating to firearms or ammunition. The legislature cleared the field on that according to statute several years ago. As absurd as it is to have conversations about gun violence and pretend that guns aren't the issue, that's what we must do. I am very much looking forward to the Gun Violence Prevention Summit that the City Manager's Office has been working on and that we're funding through ARPA funds. That is, for those of you who had not had an opportunity to dig in on that, that's going to be Sunday, August 6th and Monday, August 7th, with the first day being devoted to community conversations and more organic sorts of direction from the community, and it's in many ways specific to youth conversations and including youth as I understand it. And Monday the 7th is primarily a policy conversation with bringing in policy experts from other places. It is absolutely true that we have some of the most foremost experts in the world right here in Gainesville. We have been doing things that other communities are trying to figure out how to do for a long time. Community-oriented policing is what we do, and it's just a thing other communities are discovering at this point. So we should be aware of that. There are all sorts of things that are, to your point, Commissioner Book, are happening in Gainesville, and partnerships that we're doing that we just don't ever talk about. I mean, every week now I'm learning about new partnerships that we have as a city organization been doing with the University of Florida, with Santa Fe, with a variety of other organizations locally that we just don't know about, that don't get discussed. Which is not to say that we don't have a problem to solve. We absolutely do. The question then is, what would it look like if we didn't already have all those partnerships in place? You know, how out of control could this be if we were not doing the things that we're already doing? But also, how good can it be? You know, where can we get? As long as we have one homicide a year, it's too much. Last year we had, I want to say, 10 or 11. This year we're at about 5 right now. That's far too many halfway through the year. I am very interested in seeing what comes out of the summit. I'm also aware that the longer we wait, the more people will be injured, the more people will be hurt, the more families will be shattered. But I don't want to do something just to do something. I want to make sure that what we do is exactly the right thing to do. I'm always interested in what enormous cities are doing and what lessons we can take from them, but we don't have their resources. I mean, New York is bigger than most states and a lot of nations. I am very interested in what Mayor Demings is doing down in Orange County, and I think he may be part of our summit. So I'm very interested to hear from him. That's still a lot bigger than we are, but it's at least closer to home, dealing with the same realities of Florida stuff that we are. I do want us to be careful, as I mentioned in earlier conversations. We've got to start leaning on everybody else more. We over multiple decades got into a situation where if something wasn't being done, the city of Gainesville picked it up. If there was an unmet need in the community, the city of Gainesville very honorably raised our hands and said, this is ours, we'll pick it up, we'll figure out how to make this happen. To the point that we are overstressed. We do more things than most huge cities do. We've got to be careful with that. I know that Alachua County is interested in being helpful. I know that the Children's Trust wants to be helpful and frankly has some resources that are uncommitted. So that is a great opportunity. The University of Florida, Santa Fe College all want to be helpful. We need them to. We need them to stand up and say, we are part of this. We're going to take some lead. The community needs them to do that. We should be a part of this, but not only from a resource standpoint, but just from a how things work standpoint. If we stand up and say, we're going to do this, the city of Gainesville is going to do this, I'll promise you from having watched it happen over and over and over again, everybody else is going to say, all right, we don't have to do it. Because that's what keeps happening with homelessness, with the trunk radio system. You know why we have a trunk radio system that the city of Gainesville owns through GRU? Because nobody else was doing it. Over and over again, that sort of thing happens. So we've got to, even if we end up being the direction behind it, we've got to hold everybody else accountable and ourselves accountable with it as well. Every other organization's got to be part of this. You know who hasn't been mentioned yet? Alachua County Public Schools.
Well, no, they haven't mentioned it, and they're at the table.
All right. They've got to be right up front.
They should be front and center.
They are, and I know they've been mentioned outside this conversation, but they're a key. I mean, they have to be front and center. I want us to absolutely have a leadership role, but I really want to make sure that everybody else is at the table as well. And I also want us to take our time in putting this together so that it's done right. So that a year from now, we look back and say, that was a really good decision. And I certainly don't have everything in front of me to make a decision today on this, other than a let's move forward kind of thing. You know, let's keep moving. Absolutely in favor of that. And I totally own the fact that by saying we're not going to make a decision today, more families are going to be victims of gun violence. I get that, and that is awful. But I, again, don't want us to make the wrong decision because we feel pressured to make a decision. So the idea that we want to do something, we want to keep moving forward, yes, we should absolutely do that. To say this is what it's going to look like today, I'm not prepared to do. So those are just my thoughts. We have a whole lot of lights. Let's see who's next. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your insight and your input. I do want to just address a couple of things. And one of the first things that I will just say, I want to make sure that I'm clear on and that we're all clear on, is what the motion we put forward said. And so I will now need to see it back up on the screen, and I want the community to see it back up on the screen so all of us have clarity about what we said, what we thought, and really what I understood this to be, because it sounds like it's a little bit different from the direction that we're heading in today. Let me put my glasses on. So we see number one is declare gun violence as a public health crisis and draft a resolution to that effect. We've heard that staff is in the process of doing that and will bring that back to us at a date in the very near future. Then authorize the mayor to draft a letter to the county asking them to join us and declare gun violence as a public health crisis, draft a resolution to that effect, and partner with us in this effort. From my understanding, at the last public safety meeting, We had not heard back from the county. We have, at this point, from my understanding, at the very next day in their meeting, they had heard that this had happened over at our public safety meeting, and a commissioner reminded their chair that they had not responded. And so I anticipate, if you have not gotten it already, Mr. Mayor, you will be getting that letter pretty soon. You can actually look on their meeting and see where they did address that literally the next day. Advance and lay a foundation for convening a gun violence task force. How we advance and how we lay it. Now, those aren't the words that I remember, but that's okay. How we advance and how we lay the foundation is, I guess, where we are. And I'm fine with that. But what this says to me is that we will advance and lay a foundation for convening gun violence. I just need to make sure that we're all on the same page about what that means. Because to me, there's not really an option not to do it. It does mean, where do we fall in terms of our commitment? Who does take the lead? We do have a partner in the county that I think needs to be drawn into this conversation. As two municipal government entities, perhaps that could fall between one of the two of us. When I say lead, I want to be very clear, because from the outset of this, and just by virtue of the type of person that I am and how I've come to this political table, community is always first. And so never in my idea of what this task force looked like that I envision anything that would be very top heavy from a political standpoint. This has always been about the people, period. What I have done is find research and look at what has appeared to work and what has, through evidence, been proven to work in other places, yes, from some very large cities, because I do believe we can borrow from them and tailor to us what may work. I also have looked at smaller cities. I've looked, and obviously very close, you see right here, right on the dais, Orange County, because they're right down the street. From my understanding, we are still working on trying to get both, if not at least one Demings to come and speak. And it would be my hope that they could tell us how to do this, because based on what I've read in this document, they're doing it successfully. I am not one who is willing to rush to do anything. Do we need to be constantly and consistently combating gun violence all day, every day? Working hand in hand with the police department, working hand in hand with our community partners. When we leave this room, we need to be helping them do whatever work. But I also know that Rome was not built in a day. And we are not going to accomplish whatever work this city is going to engage in with regards to gun violence. We're not going to do that overnight. This is the long haul. And so what I envisioned when we said that gun violence is a public health crisis in Gainesville was that we were not just saying words, but that this body was going to literally commit to some sort of work. I do not want to stress staff out, but I do want us to be creative, and I do want us to be thoughtful at how we bring the necessary people to the table to do this. As a city, I think we must commit. You send a message to the people that are depending on us to commit to this. That message says, yeah, we may be strapped financially right now, but we are going to do everything we can to bring all the resources from wherever and whomever we can to this table to help us keep you safe. Should nonprofits and community organizations rise up and take the lead? Absolutely, I support that. But should the lead be coming from the city? Should the city say, we've got your back? Should we be providing some sort of impetus and push forward? Yes, that's what I believe as the city of Gainesville. I don't think that you declare something as a crisis and just leave it there. And we did that because we know where we are. We did that because we know that this problem is proliferating. And so how we address it is really the issue. I am willing to have more conversations about that. But I don't want us to take steps backward. I don't want us to shirk what I believe is our responsibility. And I want us to find ways, whether it is through putting nonprofits at the top and providing them with the level of support to do the work. The city, I do believe, has that responsibility. I think we have to lead. I think the citizens of this town are expecting us to lead. I want to have another conversation with our colleagues across the street because it is very unclear. We just haven't had the opportunity to have the conversation. So perhaps, Mr. Mayor, we can agenda that at our next meeting.
Sure.
When is that?
27th of July?
27th of July? Is it possible to get this topic
Sure, we
for
can.
discussion? I think that that's the fair thing to do. Because we said, partner with us, draft a mirror resolution. But we don't know what that means. We have to put some substance behind those words. And I'm curious, and I would love to hear from them, their thoughts on this. They know our perils. They know what we're facing. And that'll give us an opportunity at that point to see exactly what it is they are willing to do. I agree, we have to be mindful. But what I'm not willing to do is sacrifice the faith and trust that I want to work on building in this community to lead this effort. We said gun violence was a crisis. We can't sit down on that and let that just languish on a piece of paper. We've got to actually do some work. So, I'll let that be the conclusion of my statements for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Book.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of leaving this slide up. The good point that the Mayor Pro Tem highlighted is the minute we say it's a public health crisis, it opens up many more opportunities for many other organizations and nonprofits and partners to come into this thing. So I think I think that was very, very wise what we did at the time, and it's especially important because there may be some partners that are the research document is very good. So thank you, Morgan. But some of the partners that are probably not listed are things like the Alachua County Medical Society, which is exactly who comes forward. That's a critical one because they have such a wide breadth of network. So I think that's kind of good point number one. And number two, the Black on Black Crime Task Force clearly doesn't have the breadth to do this. Now, I just want to get the minutes from when they actually discussed gun violence because what they did was have a committee structure. I don't remember, Chief, when it was. We served on various committees. And you always don't want to reinvent the wheel because some of the same type of violence was occurring, which was gun violence. And it was across all demographics. But they clearly wouldn't have the capacity for that. So I would agree with that, Commissioner Chestnut. I think we get the benefit of everything that was just done within our community right here. And it will have some meaning. It was several years ago when I was with the city. I don't tell war stories, but I'm going to tell one right now. And we had we had tremendous teenager youth hybrid gang violence, and it was bad. And it was older teens essentially mentoring younger teens, and having those younger teens then become in the culture of how they're going to treat other people, and it was bad. And we still have, if anyone thinks there's not youth gang and hybrid gangs right here in Gainesville and Alachua County, oh, they're here. But when we had that, one of the mechanisms that we dealt with is we got fairly hardcore. And we used parole and probation, and I think actually Chief Jones led the effort, and Chief Scott, you may have been involved too, I just don't recall, but we had parole and probation bring these youth to us for a youth summit because, and make no bones about it, they had to be there as part of their probation. So I mentioned that, and the outcomes were fairly tremendous because bringing the youth who were basically involved in the violence and having some really, I would say, straightforward conversations was eye-opening. And it also allowed us to offer opportunities to the people engaged in the violence. Now, I believe we should be hardcore. With those who victimize others, there's only one mechanism to go, and we have to be hardcore with the people who are victimizing others. But this allowed us to offer opportunities to the youth at the table who had been involved in that culture to say, if you decide to exit the path that you're on, we're going to give you 5 or 6 opportunities. And the opportunities were things like education and career and technical resources
and working with a direct mentor in some of our nonprofit, and it was a real offer. So I mentioned that's a long way to say that if there's, I do believe, Mayor Pro Tem, efforts don't stop. We don't wait for something, we can't do it. So Mayor, you're related. So things are going on right now. One Nation, One Project. It's an arts project, but it's going on now. Police work doesn't stop 24/7, but some of the long-term things that you were talking about could involve potentially bringing some of these youth. I know it's probably your intent already to have youth. I clearly hear that. But some of the youth who might be those who are committing the violence, and this is unique, and you have to have a top facilitator that using parole and probation to bring them for a session that may be co-located or coexisting, because we need to really, the manner in which you get response is you tell them how they can go in one path. I'm talking about whoever it is that's committing the violence, and give them the other paths right there at our summit for a few of those. And that may be something to consider. Now I'm starting to talk out loud, but the fact that you got the summit going, that we have the One Nation, One Project, that you have police work going, the Children's Trust is already starting to get invested in organizations, perhaps the Reichert House and things like that are very meaningful over long term, makes me, it's probably a bad term, but I'll say excited about the fact that we got it coming. Not excited about the gun violence. That's awful. So these are kind of some scattered thoughts, but however we address things, it's got to be prevention, education, intervention, enforcement. Those are your 4 pillars. And you do that through all these different organizations as well as through us. So again, I appreciate it. And I appreciate it. I'm assuming you put together the fact that we were having a gun summit, the gun violence summit together. I don't remember. It's been a few months, but that's a good thing. And we don't wait for that. Things are going on right now. So I agree with that also. Task force makes me nervous because often it does determine who's the lead and who's the authority. And it could actually be counterproductive to us getting things done daily, but maybe not. It probably descends on how it's operated and things like that. So just a few kind of random thoughts there. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Yes.
The joint county city meeting that's on August 28th. That's the next one, August 28th.
August 28th, okay. So the good news about that is that follows the summit.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us a lot to work from. Thank you, Commissioner Book. I see the summit as a real keystone opportunity for us. And when you and I both went to the manager's office separately to ask for a similar thing, the manager's office and Ms. Carter and Ms. Smart and everybody involved there really took the ball and ran with it. And I think folks are going to be shocked at the level of not only professionalism, but big-timeness, let's say, that this summit is going to come forth with. This is, I think, going to be a turning point for the community. It is opportunity for the community to have tremendous input, and for us to hear from policymakers in a variety of other venues who can bring us. It's one thing to read about everything, but when folks can actually come out and then sit in our community and have a panel discussion about what works for them, we can take real policy action from that. And then a couple of weeks later, we can talk with the county about it. And we can that gives us a real path forward, I feel like. Commissioner Book, I just will note that when you say you don't tell war stories, our war stories are all valuable. I mean, all of us, part of what gets us elected is our experience, our lived education and understanding of all this stuff, and bringing it together to synthesize as a group. That's powerful and that matters. So thank you for bringing the war stories.
A few more weeks
we will absolutely have time for
every
those.
so often.
Yeah. So I would encourage everyone to bring your war stories in your area of expertise forward, because it matters. I mean, that's how we craft better policy. All right, having said all that, Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I had intended to speak earlier, but I guess this is just the reality of my situation right now. I agree with you that I'm not ready to really make a decision today. I'd like to give, well, I would say give staff the opportunity to see what is possible, but I know staff come October 1st will be as streamlined as it can be, and that any extra tasks would be a further weight on their already overstretched resources. That said, I do agree we need to do something. I do not want us, again, in agreement with you, to be necessarily the leader, just because I have seen plenty of issues where if we take the lead, it gets dropped on our lap and our staff, and not just us, our staff. What I would be interested in seeing, and I think I'd want staff to come back to see what is possible, what format would be most possible for them and for us, while still trying to make progress. I'd be interested in seeing if we could replicate the system that was put up when we were talking about the central receiving facility. My recollection is that had representatives from most of the groups mentioned here today, who want to be willing partners, but it wasn't, well, it definitely wasn't the city of Gainesville, who had to, I will say people the subcommittee, and that it was everybody basically sharing resources to try to figure out what direction and what elements, and everybody had some tasks to take back to their respective organizations or groups. So I think if we do anything, maybe explore what kind of formatting is possible. And I think that was one way to coordinate several large and small partners into a cohesive conversation and a plan of action. Yeah, I think currently my biggest concern is we literally do not have the staff. We do not have the staff hours. And I know our staff would try to do it if we told them to, and they would burn out. And that is not fair to them or the other services and people that they have to work with. I'm fine putting this, I'm in agreement, we should talk with the county about it, especially since it is not just a city issue. The problem doesn't stop when you cross the city line. It comes in and out. And I would agree that it shouldn't just be an issue to be given to the Black on Black task force, because no, gun violence is not committed only by Black people. But I don't know if, and I have no problem including people like groups like the Children's Trust, because young people are becoming engaged in this, but a lot of our violence is not committed exclusively by young people. Violence doesn't turn off when you go from 19 to 20. So I think it would have to be a much more broad approach and holistic approach, because it's not any one particular demographic, age, race, or otherwise that is having these issues. And it is not stemming exclusively from Gainesville or even the county. I think one of our last shootings, it was issues that originated from two people in Ocala, who then brought their issue here, and the violence was committed here, even though they were both residents of Ocala. So I think there's something to be said about bringing in broader partners and seeing a much broader picture that is in front of us. So if we do take any action, I'll leave it to my colleagues to determine a motion, but if we do take any action, I think it would be staff to assess what format of, I'll say task force for lack of a better word, but what format of collaboration would be feasible for them, and for us as an organization moving forward. And hopefully we can have that in time share that information with the county when we meet with them and get their feedback on it at that time. But that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacco. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we are not ready to make a decision today on this, but I think that we are laying a foundation for the community. I'm very, very concerned that this does not come back onto staff. It needs to be a community-led venture. And I think that if, I'm very interested in hearing what the community has to say on August 6th, when we gather with the Mayor Demings and hopefully former Congresswoman Demings and engage the community. But I am most particularly interested in what the policymakers have to say on the 7th. I think that perhaps when we meet with the county on August 28th, the school board was not able to meet with us at the last public safety meeting. They weren't there. Maybe it would be a great idea to have the school board join the city, the county, the university perhaps. It's as many collaborators as we can get to the table as possible, the Children's Trust, but that the to see who will take the leadership. But I don't think that the leadership resides solely with the city of Gainesville. And I don't think that that is a retrenchment at all. I think all we're doing is facilitating the process, but it's not a retrenchment. The school board, I think, is, and I agree with Commissioner Sacco, that no, violence does not stop or start with the school board, but we need to get as many collaborators to the table as possible to help in determining what direction we take. The direction is not the city's direction. It's not. It is the community's direction that we're looking for. So if August 28th, if we could have the school board at that same meeting, I think that would be very helpful with the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. I will reach out to
Shane,
to Shane and the chair, and as well as Chair Prizia, and make sure that's good with all involved, and see if it's possible. Lord knows they've got their own scheduling issues. So, but if not, then we should be able to figure it out soon after.
correct. And there is one key community group that has not been mentioned up here at all, and that's Moms Demand Action. They've not been mentioned, but they definitely need to be at every table when we gather.
And by the way, I'm working to get every town, the larger group, involved on for the summit as well. So yeah.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, okay. All right, Commissioner Duncan-Block.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure that the public had the opportunity to hear that the school board was invited to our public safety meeting.
They weren't there.
Shane was unable to attend. He is aware, in our conversations, he's completely bought into the idea in assisting us address gun violence. He has been informed of the idea that we were going to do what our motion says, which is lay foundation for convening a task force. And that's what I see this as being. I hear all of you, I hear everyone's comments up here, and I am greatly appreciative. We are laying a foundation. I have reiterated several times, the community does have to be at the forefront. We may differ on where I believe that the city needs to fall. I want to stress that I do not want to burden staff. I do appreciate Commissioner Sacco's suggestions with regards to having staff to bring us back away. That would give us a little bit of guidance as to how we can do something along the lines of a task force. If we want to change the name, the mission still remains the same. The mission is the same. If you believe, Commissioner Book, that the community would be averse to the words, we can change it. I care nothing about words. I care about the outcomes. And what we have seen is through entities and agencies and organizations and municipal governments like Orange County, when they do task forces, they're finding the results that they want. That's all I want. I'm looking for outcomes. And I'm looking for how the city of Gainesville responds to that. I heard the comment a little bit earlier about the youth violence, and it was you, Commissioner Book, and I could really appreciate what you were talking about, engaging the youth. I'm really, really big on that as well, and bringing the actual individuals in who are committing the violence. You know who's already doing that and who has their finger on the pulse? That's internal? The interrupters. But we're looking at cutting their funding, and that's something that I really want us to reconsider, because when you start talking about really looking at addressing the problem at its root, touching the individuals who are directly involved, we're already doing that work. Bringing them into a space at the summit is possible, but I will tell you, at the meeting, at the public safety meeting, we opened up with a young man that I had the privilege and blessing of meeting several months ago. His name is Adrian, and Adrian is previously justice involved. He went to prison for 11 and a half years for a violent crime. He came out, he decided he wants to be a part of the solution and not the problem. He is an A honor roll student out at Santa Fe. He is working on his certification or degree, I believe it is, to be a med tech. He is a success story, and he is an individual that has committed his life to reaching out to young people who are potentially headed down the path that he's already traveled. And he considers it his mission to deter them. He's a part of this. He wants to know how he can be a part of a task force or whatever the city is going to do. All I can tell you is that while yes, the community needs to lead, and we should be empowering them to do that, they're also looking at the city for what we're going to do. And that's a reality. I do think that we should be aware of, if we're not, that the Children's Trust has moved safety up in their strategic plan on their list of priorities. And that's a good thing. It is why they came to me and said, we have money that we would like to provide. I got an idea of what that is. I don't want to share it today, but they do need to come to the table, and we'll let them share it, because it is a considerable amount that would be very helpful if it is to reinvigorate some existing programs, if it is to put into something new, if it is to put into the community, empowering community organizations to do the work. That is one of the ways that they have committed, or that they want to commit to partner with us through the resources that they have. That's through their strategic plan priorities. At the Youth Summit on the Community Day, one of the events is going to be a youth town hall, because we do too much talking from daises in other community meetings, and we talk about the kids all the time. But they need to have the microphone, and they need to tell us. They need to be informing and shaping policy and rules and guidelines and regulations. And so it is my hope that at that town hall, we'll have a chance to hear from some of our most vulnerable population who that violence is proliferating amongst. That's the very sad truth. How we can better serve them, how we can craft policy or whatever, programming to help serve them. That's going to happen on the Community Day. Yes, I don't mind.
So we do have a whole lot of folks who want to speak, but go ahead.
Well, no, this is just a question, like you said, if there's a draft agenda or something, it'd be great. I mean,
I haven't, you know what, I haven't seen an agenda. What it has been more for me, and I don't know if, I think it's been like this for you too, Mayor, that staff has just been communicating and asking for a little input as they come up with things and devise things. But the youth town hall was an idea that I took to them, because I've always understood that if we don't center their voices, we've missed the mark. So it will be them with the microphone. And I think we're going to find a pretty creative way to open that up that will allow them to feel free to speak. Because a lot of people are afraid of public speaking regardless of age. But I've had very good success with with certain theatrical openers. So I think we may have something exciting in store for us with that, but I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you for asking. I will conclude.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Walker, for keeping this on the agenda. I never quite know what to say in these conversations because it's so overwhelming, and it's so trying to figure out how to reduce something like like violence when everyone has access to a gun right on their hip whenever there's whenever they're angry, whenever there's a fight, and then the fact that we can't, of course, control our borders, who comes in and out, like I heard Commissioner Sacco say, that what can we meaningfully do? I remember driving along with Chief Tony Jones. He brought me up to, I think it was Pine Ridge, took me up to Pine Ridge and just picked his brain about it and said, have you committed your life to something that is just so, ephemeral and so, but also so important? I mean, it's heartbreaking, the families that have lost people, the people that have lost their lives to gun violence, and then just the impact that has on communities beyond just the people that are impacted by it. And so I appreciate you continuing to bring this up. I keep thinking back on when we made this motion on February 2nd, and then kind of what happened in the weeks following that. Within 2 weeks of this, I remember it was the mayor, our city manager, our GRU general manager was sitting before the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee. And I know for me that was a huge change into how are we going to approach these things. Not that we will scale back or that our goals are not our goals as a city, but perhaps the tactics that we get to those goals is different. And really thinking through with what tools do we have and how do we most efficiently use those tools. So I agree with everyone that says, how do we ensure that that we are better utilizing all of our partners? How do we ensure that the people that have the tools that could be best used for each one of these things that help to get us to that point where we in the city of Gainesville, I mean, I'm pulling up the data here, but looking at murder rates in the past, we are seeing an increase in murder rates, but I know that for all of the work that we've done with community policing, with that we are seeing impacts on this. I mean, we do have a lower murder rate than Jacksonville. I don't know where we are compared to Orlando, but I'm guessing I'm seeing Tony Jones nod his head in the back. But I mean, we have seen impacts. Where exactly these sort of these community-based interventions, how those have impacted. I'm not sure where, I'm not sure when, but I know that I feel safe walking around in Gainesville much more than when going up and visiting some of our peer cities around places like, I don't know where we are in comparison to Tallahassee, but if I remember right, we're about the same, but I believe Tallahassee might be a little higher in terms of murders per capita. Am I getting a thumbs up in the back? Yeah. And I know when people move here, they always feel like they're feeling safer. So I know that the way that we have approached policing has been impactful, but then we're starting to lose that. And so we need to continue to stay on the ball. When I think about what our city has to offer, one, of course, is we have the Gainesville Police Department and continuing to utilize that community policing, continuing to work with our school board, with our partners. So, but I also think that part of this conversation, and it's something that Commissioner Book, you've mentioned in the past, is crime prevention through environmental design. That I think is something that we need to continue. I mean, when you think of what our city does, we mostly do land and we do infrastructure, and then we have a couple of services, buses, firefighters, police, then we do other things as well. But if you think of the core services of the city, a lot of it is the infrastructure we put in the ground and the way that we decide what land use is. And I've seen good data coming out of that, and I think that's something we should continue to explore over the next, as we go through this and over the next 3 or 4 years. But I appreciate you continuing to bring us forward, and I think now we need to probably go through August and figure out where how we can come out of this where we can get a gun violence task force where everyone is coming to the table and putting forward the tools that they have. Because, like I said, within 2 weeks of this, I know my whole conception of what our city can do and what tools it can use in order to get to our goals is there. But I still agree, this is really important. We need to keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Switch seats. Okay, who's number 4? Is that Commissioner Willits? Okay, Commissioner Willits.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It dawned on me that both Ms. Smart and Ms. Carter's departments are 2 departments that we are cutting, that we are most likely headed to staff cuts. And this kind of community outreach with a task force is partially their field. And here we have, so I really respect Commissioner Sacco for mentioning about how we impact, what we ask of our staff, because two of the departments that absolutely would be involved in this, we are looking at significant cuts to. So I'm very aware of that. But I do want to echo, I think to some degree echo the Mayor Pro Tem about, we decided, and it says we are going to advance and lay a foundation for convening a gun violence task force. So it is upon us, because that's what we've already agreed to. If people didn't want to do that, they should have voted no on this. But we said we're going to do that. And convening is a great word to have in here, because it doesn't necessarily say that we are going to tell everyone how this is all going to work. I read that word as we are bringing the people together, and that's people from our community. It's the partners that are a little easier to identify off the top of our, right off the tip of our tongue, we can identify them, but that there's an opportunity to convene other, and to dig deeper, and to allow the people we bring together to then dig deeper and bring them to the table. So I think it is incumbent on us to make sure that we are laying that foundation, and whether it's that it really fits in naturally after that summit, particularly after we hear maybe a lot from youth, they may help us identify some of those other people in the community that would be good fits. Maybe they nominate right there and say, look, at minimum, we know someone who should be on this task force. Good, I welcome it. I do think that we have tasked ourselves with it, and so we have to be leading towards that. Whether it's at the best time is still a little bit into the future, and I do want to make sure we don't overburden staff. But we already agreed to do this, though that February 2nd date was before some of our budgetary impetuses, but we did decide to do it, so I'm sticking with it. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pass.
Okay.
I was wondering, you had to turn it on.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Okay. Thank you again. And without really belaboring the point, I have heard all of your hearts today, and I appreciate this robust conversation. This is really what it's all about. I will say that I jotted down a couple of notes again. With the word per capita, or the words per capita, were thrown out. One of the things that I'm aware of is that unfortunately the city of Gainesville leads per capita in terms of gun violence. Am I wrong? Do we what?
Yes.
We lead?
We do it higher.
Okay, so we have some, there are impacts, absolutely. I agree, Commissioner Eastman, I agree. But I want us to always remain cognizant of the fact that this mountain is huge. And it's going to take a lot of people to come. None of the people that have been called out, none of the individuals that were in this room at the last public safety meeting, that's not an exhaustive list of people or organizations. And so as we move forward, I'll just use this. A lot of individuals have expressed not just a desire, but at the end of the day, the way that this is being rolled out in a lot of different places is that some folks are literally advertising. They're opening up the opportunity to be on the task force. So it's not, I'm going to be very transparent. I don't have the desire for anyone on the task force to be appointed. I don't like that. It needs to be open. I think we can identify institutional partners, because that's something that's very specific. But when you start talking about individuals from the community, or even community organizations themselves, that needs to be an open and organic process. They need to be empowered to lead this in various ways. So,
I think the chief wanted to respond.
I want to finish this thought though. I want to reiterate that some people do feel safe in their communities, but some people don't. And it has not as much to do with any failed efforts on the police department as to just what simply is going on in the world and how crazy it's become. It's impacted by a lot. It's impacted by media and video games and music. It's impacted by social structures. It's impacted by gangs. It's impacted by poverty. It's impacted by a number of those root causes that we always hear about. I'm just open and eager to chart the path forward, to lay that foundation and be the convener. Chief?
And in response to the per capita,
Yes, sir.
no, we don't lead.
We don't.
We don't lead the state.
I was told that by someone in your agency.
That we lead the state in
Yes, sir.
homicides. per
Yes, sir. Gun violence.
I
Okay, well,
doubt
they gave me some
serious-
wrong information.
Yeah, I doubt seriously that we
Let's
lead
talk
the
out.
state.
You said you doubt, seriously?
Yes, ma'am. I have to go and I can pull the stats from last year.
Okay, well, please pull it.
And that would give you a good idea of where, but
Please do.
we're nowhere near some of these larger areas like Miami and
No,
some of the places like that per capita.
but see, you can't compare, I don't ever compare us to Miami. We're a different size, there's a lot of differences between Miami. But we definitely, could you please see me after
Yeah,
the meeting?
yeah, I can get that
Because that
information
came
for you.
out of your agency,
Okay.
okay? Thank you.
Well done.
Yes, I will conclude.
Okay, all right. Have we, just a second, Commissioner, have we heard from the public yet? I don't believe we have.
Mr. Mayor, we do have one speaker, Mr. Collie Blunt.
Come on up, Mr. Blount.
Thank you. Although it's being discussed now, I'm really concerned about the political will to meet this crisis or even consider it a crisis. I've heard some say Gainesville is pretty much okay. And the comment that was just made about our stats, I don't know if that's comparing gross numbers or per capita, and that is a very different measure. But you know, my emergency button just needs one black youth to blast another one to feel like emergency mode. It doesn't take a whole lot of anyway. So I have concern about political will. Your number 4, that February 2nd says expand programs that we already do. Yet discontinuing Riker, discontinuing the interrupters, that's diametric opposite of that point 4. And particularly the interrupters, who can actually get weapons off the street in ways no uniformed Leo can experience. You know, so cutting these programs to me demonstrates a level of unconcern that can conscience increasing fatalities. And also because I've had some experience in the past offering to the countywide multi-jurisdictional juvenile justice committee world-tested tools to meet gang violence and other youth violence, and having those Nobel Prize nominated protocols soundly rejected. The reason I think that happened and all that is a longer story you can get on your 3 minutes, but I want to get through some of this. Now, I have strong opinions about part of what is needed for the black community's internal adjustments to our young people's self-concept and potential for cohesion. And I'm willing to back up that opinion with interminable volunteer time. Toward that, that I want to serve in a component program would be incompatible with being on the task force, but I would certainly show up to whichever of their meetings are made public. And I also wonder, is there a way to set that up where they would be able to have some closed-door sessions too? Because I'm pretty sure there will arise the need for some members of this to sternly correct others. And I think it's when it forms, it should meet, I would wish weekly, but I know that's fast for government, but at least twice monthly until something useful is really rolling. And it should include the heads of our law departments, you know, the chief, the sheriffs, the judge of juvenile court, but that any other Leo presence on that should be people who are on the street, who are in touch, like maybe have the Riker staff elect amongst their own rank and file members to put on this, not management, but rank and file. And I would refer you to the National Gang Center.ogp.gov for some ideas out of the Justice Department on how you can do this and do it quickly, please. I mean, every week. You know, how many weeks will we go by? How many numbers will we count up before this starts rolling?
Thank you, Mr. Blount. I do want to point out a couple things. First of all, it's splitting hairs, but it matters because it's how the things get reported in the media when they watch this. We have not cut the budget for the interrupters. That was a grant-funded program that is ending. The grant is ending. It is not something we had in our budget. And it sounds like splitting hairs, but the way these things get reported matters. Nobody is saying that we don't have a problem. Nobody is saying everything's pretty much okay. It's not. That's why we're having this conversation. That's why we devoted the better part of this meeting and many other meetings to it, and we will continue to. We need to do more than have meetings, and that's the whole point, is figuring out what the right thing to do is. That's my whole point, at least, in this. So, Commissioner Book, you're up, and then Commissioner Chestnut.
So we all have our areas of expertise, and I've been on a significant learning curve on the land use and zoning, right? I mean, that's something as I do more studying. This would be one that I would consider my area of expertise. And if I'm hearing you, Mayor Pro Tem, you were talking about being the leader in violence. I actually don't think it's important whether we're the top, because I think the real message is it's an unacceptable level.
Absolutely.
Right, so that's the key, I think. Where we stand statistically, it's high, and it's not in control. So I think I'm echoing you there. Hopefully I'm echoing you there, in that that's why you have to take actions. And I didn't speak at all about staff time from a task force, because actually when safety trumps everything, that one is actually not my concern. My concern was strictly about efficiency and operation and the way you do it. So I had a little different take on there. Obviously, I'm very passionate about this particular thing. So now you've had me talk 4 times here at the dais,
There you
right?
go.
On one
You got
topic.
yourself.
This is the most I think I've spoken on any topic in 6 months. We have things like parks and recreation, and I think you referenced this, Commissioner. They're doing the midnight basketball. It's a small component, but it's a meaningful component. Right, so you got people at all ages, essentially young adult and teens, that are basically doing something that's a whole lot of fun for several hours when they may be doing something else, and it's been good. And I know you kind of led a Moms Demand Action event that we had up there, and it was gun violence prevention, right, Mr. Mayor? Youth Summit. The HPW Coalition, Health Prevention and Wellness Coalition, has actually done many, many youth summits over the last few years directly with the school board. It may already be on your radar, I don't know, but they've done that a few times, so they may already know how to reach out quickly and efficiently, is why I even mentioned them. And they operate under what used to be the corner drugstore, CDS, but the HPW Coalition. And then I hear, Mr. Mayor, you talk about policy, and policy and legislation is an absolute critical aspect. If we can do something here that changes our ordinance or legislation, or we do safe engineering like SEPTED, like Commissioner Eastman mentioned, then those are big picture, long-term impacts that people see behind the scenes. On the legislative side, I hope some things that will be coming up will be ordinances that overlap with gun violence or violence in general or crime. So what is that? We have a nuisance prevention ordinance that needs to be built out a little more significantly than what it is right now. Because you cannot have a business that has violence in their operation all the time, and yet that's not a component of the ordinance. So I'm thinking summit now. On the ordinance and legislation and policy side, the nuisance ordinance should be something we take a look at. I hate to dig this up. I'm not trying to make this a separate thing. The open container, we now have a research report. Alcohol use and the manner in which things happen and what people do once they're under the influence of alcohol is a legislative, it's a policy. And so I think we should take a look at the open container ordinance as it relates to the summit. I don't want to weigh down the summit on the core, which is gun violence, don't get me wrong. The bottle club ordinance, which has been sparingly used over the years, is another city policy, city legislative item that probably we should be taking a look at, because these are big picture pieces that we can impact right here. And so I think those are just the thoughts. I actually wanted you to, Mayor Pro Tem, to conclude, so I'm sorry that I'm talking again.
There's more.
But I guess I didn't hit the button in the right time. I tried to do it before you. So anyhow, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Speaking of open container, I believe in late July or early August, we will have that ordinance and some changes to that coming back before us. So that is on the horizon.
Yes, sir.
Possibly even prior to the summit. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just following up on your comment on splitting hairs and funding. The city received $230,000 for the interrupters program, but we are returning 180,000 to the state of Florida because we only spent 48,000. So I think that when we're looking at programs, we must look also at the efficiency and the effectiveness of them. And perhaps there are others that can be spent. Did you spend all of the 180,000?
No, ma'am, we are still,
Since-
it's going to be less than that. I met with staff this morning.
Okay.
And they are billing the state. And we got till 30 days after the grant is closed to submit invoices.
Okay, well, would you please come back to us, because what we
Yeah.
received at the public safety
Right,
committee
that- but
meeting was
I
that.
said at the public-
Okay, just let me
yeah,
finish.
yes,
What
ma'am.
we received at the public safety committee meeting was that you spent 48,000 and that we had to return 180,000 to the state on June 30th.
Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Mayor, that was incorrect. What happened was we were continuing preparing the invoices to send to the state. So
Okay, well, then we'll look for a letter from the city manager
Yes.
informing us of the exact amount. Again,
Yes.
when we look at programs, we must look at effectiveness and accountability in spending of public dollars. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Number 9, is that? Okay, so Commissioner Duncan Walker, was this for a motion? And then can we hear from him before? Yeah, okay, great, thanks, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I was just following up with the discussion on open container. We do have a draft ordinance that's going to be coming to you on July 20th when you're back from recess, which will make some proposed changes to what we currently have in place for open container for commission consideration.
Very good, thank you. July 20. So next meeting. Okay, Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm grateful, thank you, Chief Jones, for providing us with that update. We do look forward to that. And I think, Commissioner Chestnut, thank you for your comments there as well, because we want to be fiscally responsible, but we also want to make sure that we have the accurate information. And that's one of the things that we had incomplete information that day based on what you all had at your disposal. And so I do look forward to receiving that so that in any future conversation about the interrupters, because see, that program has proven to be quite beneficial around this country. And I feel like $230,000 paled in comparison to what other cities got. There are cities that have pumped millions of dollars into interrupters. And it's evidence-based work. It's stuff that's working in different cities. So we got $230,000. Perhaps we should have a conversation around that, because certainly as we look at our strategies towards moving forward and how we address it, once again, I want to say this. I'm not asking for the city to spend a dime on it. The Children's Trust specifically identified that program. So at the end of the day, I'm grateful once again, colleagues. I'm looking forward to bringing the county into this conversation. I am looking forward to asking staff to find ways that we can look at laying this foundation with minimal impact to them. So with that, if there is no further comment, I'd like to put the motion on the floor.
Sure. That
we agenda a conversation about partnership opportunities and a task force discussion with the county, and that we direct staff to bring back a format for a task force with minimum impact to staff.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion and second. So I want to go back and mention just briefly, I think Mr. Blount said something about the ability of the task force to basically to operate differently than a government agency does.
Sure. Yeah.
So that is
Add
something
that
we
to-
should keep in mind when that recommendation comes back to us. The more involved we are with if we name anybody to it, it is a sunshine board.
For sure.
The more we have to do with the structure of it, the more it becomes probably a sunshine board.
Yes.
So the less we have to do with, if we just kind of roll it down the hill, it probably can pick up steam on its own and make its own rules. But the more we have to do with the initial structure, the less nimble it's going to be able to be. So just keeping that in mind as we move forward. Not saying that one or the other is better, but the more we have to do with setting it in motion, the less nimble it is going to be. Commissioner Chestnut, you'd like to...
I was going to say, I liked your statement, and perhaps the maker of the motion will add it. I think you said with less governmental, you said something.
Less structural requirement from us.
Less structural, yeah,
I
if
think
that could
that
be
would
added
be
to the
the-
motion.
Are you
With
comfortable
less
with that, or-
structural requirement from,
Here's why I don't want to be very specific right now. And I like that, to be honest. It's not that I don't like it, but what I want to do is give the county an opportunity to
Right.
come into a full conversation with us about the task force. The first part of the motion is to invite them into a discussion, and I feel like we're leading them there.
okay, but here's the problem. If you don't make it clear from here, from what we're saying, if we're not clear, it's going to become a problem, just like it is with number 3 up there now, because it's not clear. And I think what the mayor was saying, for clarity's sake.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, the earlier we make it clear that we don't want something that we are appointing and that sort of thing, the more likely it is that doesn't end up as a sort of a hidebound, difficult to work with board. And I'm honestly not sure the right way to make
My
that
concern
motion,
is
so,
only that we're
yeah.
making this decision. They should be a part of that conversation.
No,
It's
but-
not that I have a problem necessarily with the idea. It is just that I feel if we're going to have a conversation about task forces, that we're now taking away their ability to be a part of that part of the conversation. They may agree with you, and it may be that we are able to vote on something and it passes unanimously at the city and the county. I just really feel like they ought to be able to have a voice in that.
Perhaps if we just ask staff to bring back options.
That's
That's-
what
Options.
I mean,
that's,
yeah,
yes.
that's, very- yeah, I mean,
Options.
yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Options, so will that be added to your motion? Bring back options, I think
So
the word
we
options.
have direct staff to bring back a format for task force with minimum impact to staff and options?
And options.
You all are comfortable with that?
Yes.
That's fine.
Options.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, I don't see any other lights. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, all right, that is unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that discussion. Sure, we only have one thing, but then we also have member comments. So yeah, let's take 5. Yeah. Thanks. We'll be back at 3:50, or we'll be back at 3:55 just to make it clean. Well, we have just a couple more things to plow through here. We've got one agenda item and then member comment, and then we are without a meeting for nearly a month. All right, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item is 2023-545, General Policy Committee Administrative Session, with the recommendation that the General Policy Committee set its schedule for FY23 Q4.
All right, Morgan, do you want to lead us off on this?
Sure. Hi again, Mayor and Commissioners. Morgan Spicer, Policy Oversight Administrator. So this is really, as was mentioned, is really just agenda setting for the final quarter when you all come back from your summer recess. I don't have too many items preset for you all. It was discussed at an earlier commission meeting this month that you all would like to have the lot size discussion on July 27th, so I did place that there. Otherwise, as you can see, there is some space. I'm not sure if staff has any requests for scheduling at this time, but otherwise I'm happy to add items as you all request.
Very good. So July 27th, when we talk about lot size, one of the things that I am hoping for that day is not just lot size, but ideas that we may have about housing policy and land use and zoning as it relates to housing policy. So I would say use the next month and a half, have conversations with staff, with the community, and come back with specific things, not big, huge things, although if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But what I'm hoping for is reasonably small, actionable sorts of things that we can start a process through, because we've all agreed that there are things that need to be done. We just don't know exactly what they are, and we want to make sure that we can work with the community on those things. And I would lay out one other item on August 10th. We've had discussions in the past, and we have a research report about a sponsorship policy, and that needs to happen. We are nearing a point where we're going to need sponsorships to keep some programs alive, and where there are bigger opportunities in front of us, and we really need that to come back for us to discuss and nail down, because we're going to miss opportunities if we don't put some larger policies together so that staff has something to work from. So, Commissioner Book.
I was just going to say two topics that I was going to send an email to the clerk that could really be agended anywhere. One would be a comprehensive plan update. And it's a picture that kind of lends itself maybe to lot size discussion, since at some point next year we got to get that in the comp plan informs many of these other discussions that we have. So that might be one topic. That would be it.
Okay.
For now.
All right.
Thank you.
I would like to be careful about putting something as big as comp plan with things like lot splits and lot sizes and that sort of thing, because that's the big, that's the mothership.
It may be a little too large for that, but potentially a different date. I understand that.
Yeah.
I was just suggesting it's got to be a topic that we hear about in the next 2 to 3 months. We can't be waiting, because we're going to be making land use and zoning decisions that are big, and yet we have a comprehensive plan that's not finalized.
Well, so to be clear, our comp plan that we currently have is active and remains active until we make a change to it. We're okay. It's not, we don't have a truck barreling down on us on that. So there's no deadline on it, so to speak. Mr. Persons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say, I guess both about the July 27th meeting, if any of the commission is interested in meeting with staff and talking about it, since I'm not in the day-to-day anymore, but I have staff that is, so they're happy to sit down and talk or answer any questions y'all might have in terms of some of the prep that you're doing for that meeting. And then I wanted to follow up with what Commissioner Book said. We do, I believe, have a joint meeting set now for the Plan Board and the City Commission, and the comprehensive plan is certainly something that board has wanted to talk to y'all about. I know y'all have wanted to talk about it. So that is, I think, sometime in August, I believe, like early first, second week in August. So that will be a topic of discussion that we're planning for on the staff side.
Very good. Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. I I missed the very beginning of this conversation, but as it relates to sort of having these sort of big conversations related to zoning versus the kind of putting like the whole comprehensive plan on there, my hope, and I kind of echoed this before, is that as we kind of continue to talk about land use and zoning changes, that we kind of take it off in smaller bite-sized chunks that the community can wrap their head around, that we can really talk to our constituents about, get their feedback on it. I think one of the big mistakes of the previous commission was to continuously bundle these large things all together into one thing, which made all of them seem like whatever the most controversial or the most toxic part of whatever was in there, it became only that one thing. And I've seen us do pretty good work when we just take things one at a time, like the parking minimums change that occurred I think it was last year that you guys voted on that, where everyone kind of came together. Everyone could understand it. The community could wrap their heads around it, and we felt comfortable we were honoring our constituents with that. So I appreciate you, Mr. Mayor, putting this on there. I will say that during this time, if the bill does indeed get signed, we're going to have a lot of conversations related to the separation of who's doing what responsibilities related to Gainesville Regional Utilities, how funding will work, even going down to the branding. Do we want to continue it to be, is it Gainesville Regional Utilities or Gainesville Regional Utilities Authority going forward? These are all things that I know a lot of our staff has thought about. I've thought a lot about things I haven't really felt like there's no real reason to spend a whole lot of commission time, but I appreciate this being open because I assume that something as big as cleaving our city in half and all of the ramifications of that is going to take quite a bit of GPC time and staff time. And so it's good to keep it open, but and that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I would also say that this gives us, without fully filling all this today, it gives us opportunities to do emergency work on the budget if that is necessary as well. This is not the way we normally a lot of this would be full already, or at least have some bones on it, but this is not a normal year. So that's one of the issues. And also the fact that we have 3 brand new commissioners, you all don't know what this normally looks like. You have it staked out your spots to fill in those things. So that's another thing that makes this a different year than normal. So, Commissioner Willits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Eastman, talking about a little bit about GRU should 1645 get signed. That's what I wanted to talk about, and perhaps not as deep or some of those are going to be real critical conversations with staff so that they can hear what we're thinking. But the one that came to mind that's a little more community-based, and that's why I want us to talk about, is the Utility Advisory Board. Because that's perhaps the least of our worries to some degree, but I think we, by October 1st, we need to have some understanding of how does the Utility Advisory Board operate in a different world? Is it still necessary? Do we need to task them differently? Do we need to look at different people being on it, different types of people, since some of our control, since the Utility Advisory Board, they can advise us, but if we can't then in turn advise GRU. So that's one of those things also I'd like that conversation. And because they're not staff, they're people in our community who've been on it in the past, on it now, and looking to be on it. I would like to be able to reach out to them and to start to hear some of their thoughts should 1645 be signed.
So maybe put a discussion about the UAB on August 10th.
Something, because by then we will definitely know it. And this is not quite as Commissioner Eastman mentioned. We have a lot of conversations about branding and operations between GRU and city, but this is a little easier to talk about. But we're gonna have to get some community feedback and then feedback amongst ourselves.
Thank you, Commissioner Willits. Hang on just a minute. Let me get to Commissioner Sacco, then I'll get to you. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I remember the intent of the July 27th conversation, and I'm very happy that we're going to have kind of an open table of ideas. Speaking with Ms. Spicer earlier, we kind of agreed it might be helpful to have kind of a brief housing update from our staff as far as where some of our programs are, as far as renters' rights. I think we had pushed forward to have a mediation program, and kind of where all of those measures stand, given bills passed in Tallahassee. And I think staff was going to double check on some of those and get back to us. I don't know if that would be an appropriate update to have prior to us having that housing discussion, just so that we could have all these great plans and ideas, only to find out, well, we actually can't do any of that anymore. And I know some of the projects I had been working on were nullified by some of the bills worked. So it's kind of back to the drawing table for us and for a lot of our community who wants to be involved in housing. So I wasn't sure if, given that it would be not so much a discussion as a brief informational from staff, if we could put that in for July 27th as the first item to kind of give us our bearings.
Sort of an impact of legislation on housing policy.
Yeah, well, at least our housing measures, not overall, but programs we had propped up, programs we were going to put up, just to kind of tell us what the field looks like right now before we start the conversation.
That's probably also a good opportunity for us to get a Sadowski update as some of that shakes out. Yeah.
I hope they haven't, completely pilfered it.
Yeah.
And I did have one item. It can go later. It's being worked on now, but it's a bit of a follow-up from the former Zero Waste Subcommittee, where we had a green purchasing policy, but it was very loosely, if possible, try kind of condition. And so I've asked that we look at how other municipalities take charge and try to be more environmentally conscious in their purchasing. And so that is being worked on. I don't have much of a direction that I'm interested in going, so much as assessing what other folks are trying to do, and to see what we can do moving forward, what pieces we can possibly glean. So I'm okay putting those in September. It shouldn't be
Well, let's just say August
a
24.
huge
Let's
for
just
that.
say 8/24. We didn't put anything on there yet, so.
Okay, I wasn't married to any date, but yeah, thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I was going to suggest the sponsorship, and to have Morgan come back and update us on that. So thank you for bringing that up for August 10th. But maybe on August 10th, we should tentatively just put in general utilities.
Sure, okay.
So that by that time, we'll know whether it's going to be broad or very, very succinct. We'll know where we are with it, but I was thinking of general discussion.
Absolutely,
If
yeah.
need be.
Yes, sir.
With that, I would want to know if there's any expectation from us, either legal or from general manager, for that discussion. So I guess as we get closer to that date, we can kind of talk about. Yeah, I just want to be prepared, obviously prepared for the meeting.
Right. Thank you. Okay, anyone else have anything to add on this calendar? Otherwise, I'll promise you, all these dates are going to fill in just like today filled in. It started out as a really light one, and we got through a lot of territory today. And that will happen with all of these dates too. Don't feel pressure to nail something down. If we know about things, we should put them on there, but the commission abhors a vacuum, so. So nothing else on that? Okay.
That's it, Mr. Mayor. No
Okay.
speakers.
All right, so the clerk's office has good notes on that.
If I could just ask one clarifying question. Did the comprehensive plan discussion, did the joint meeting satisfy that request? Or do we need to place it on an additional? Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
great, thank you.
Very good. Okay, Madam Clerk, what's next?
Our next item is member comment.
Very good. All right, this is our last opportunity for member comment officially until July 20. All right, Commissioner Willits.
It's my understanding the Gators are playing some baseball this weekend, so
That's right.
everyone should tune in. They are on a roll, and it's an exciting time in Gainesville and hopefully in Omaha as well. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Buck.
Yeah,
I actually had a serious topic after that too. So that kind of threw me off. I'll just say it, and maybe a future agenda when Wild Spaces, Public Places comes back with an agenda. I wonder if there'll be any appetite for discussing it all, Thelma Bolton again, in the manner in which we're spending the funds. Purely from a financial standpoint, my intent is not for us to devolve into a great conversation, but the 5.6 million over 2 years of Wild Spaces is going to be 35% of our Wild Spaces funds over those 2 years. And we have a whole lot of projects that we previously approved. So strictly from the Historic Preservation Board is the recommendation we went to. I know that would generate a lot of conversation. I only bring it up here to say that might be something that comes up in the Wild Spaces, Public Places, and if there might be any appetite to be thinking about the lower cost option, strictly from a budgetary standpoint. So I'll have one other comment after that that's a lot more light than that particular one.
So I will say I don't have any appetite for having that conversation again. We had a lot of conversation about over a multi-year period. So it's not like
Absolutely no appetite for it.
So that's a yes then?
No appetite for it.
See, you figure these politics out. You're on it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I bring it up in member comment also.
Yes, thank you.
Did you want me to go just?
Yeah, go ahead.
The last one was just kudos. So the clerk's office, a little reorganization. We have an interim clerk. We've talked about their structure, and it's probably important to note, since we had 2 presentations from them, that they put out at some of our direction, various members of the dais, 6 different research and reports that address some of the topics that are helping us inform what we're doing. So I think that's good work on the clerk's office. So thank you, Madam Clerk. And just for the public, I thought it's important. So gun violence prevention, I know that must have come from you, Mayor Pro Tem. Public-private partnerships, that was you, Commissioner Chestnut. Municipal park hours analysis, that was from me. Bar hours and open container. Expert public comment time, I think that you had directed that, Mr. Mayor. And the urban and greenway trails from you, Commissioner Eastman. I know Commissioner Sacco's had a couple of projects in the work, and you've had a couple of projects in the work. So I mention that only to say that there's a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes that helps us with what we're doing. And I just want to point out that we have a whole lot of reading that is good work by the clerk's office. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Book. Mr. Cunningham.
I was trying to jump in after commissioners, but I realize I'm not. I'll try to be quick. I wanted to provide what I think is really good news for you all as you go on to your recess, and that is you all know our utility bills are made up of 2 pieces. So there's the base rate piece and there's a fuel adjustment piece. The base rate piece is something that is adjusted annually. The fuel adjustment is the portion of the bill that we look at monthly, and it can be adjusted based on how much the cost of the fuel is that we buy to generate electricity. And so we were able in April to lower that fuel adjustment by 15 mils, which on a 1,000 kilowatt hour bill is about $15. When the bill comparisons came in from FMEA, which there's often a lot of talk about the bill comparisons, we are now no longer toward the top. We're actually 7th in line compared to other utilities, and so that's good news. The other good news that I would like to share is that yesterday I approved us lowering the fuel adjustment another 15 mils starting July 1st. So as we get into these summer bills and they're coming up, we were able to lower them again. And again, that is based upon what we're paying for fuel, where our fuel levelization balance is. And so I will be providing information to you all more on that. But I just wanted, as we were ending this meeting, wanted to let you all know that. And I think that is really good for our customers. Again, as they are getting their July bills, it'll reflect that additional reduction in the fuel adjustment.
Very good. That is good news. Thank you. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not sure whether you were going to mention this, but yesterday there was the virtual groundbreaking for the East Side Urgent Care. And I've gotten some phone calls about wanting to see an actual groundbreaking. I don't think that any requests are going to come before the city from some constituents who reached out to me. I believe some requests have been put into the county, and I believe the county may pick that up. So just putting that out there in the ethos to my colleagues here at this dais, that may be something that comes back around in a much more tangible way. And hopefully there won't be any invitations involved this time. That was something that was a real sore spot for a lot of folks, that these are public dollars coming down from the federal government, and the idea that folks would have been invited and some folks did not receive invitations to that was a real problem. So I certainly hope that the county does do that, and that we all show up, and all of our voices are able to be heard.
So there will be, my hope is lots and lots of groundbreakings at EHETI, and if there's something specific to that, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they're
I'm
coming
all
back
about
specifically
groundbreaking
about the
celebrations.
urgent care. Yeah,
Okay, well,
for sure.
we're going to be doing a lot of them. We've got an RTS facility and a whole lot of other things that'll be happening right there over the next several months. So that's that'll be good.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. I also wanted to go on a light note, jumping off Commissioner Book's statements. We were all, the three new folks, we all came in January 5th, so July 5th would be 6 months that we've been in the position. And I just wanted to thank all of my fellow commissioners up here. I don't know exactly what I expected coming onto the commission, but what I found was all of us working together very well, trying to support each other's projects as best we can, particularly when we came in January 5th, and within about a month and a half, we, as I mentioned, were before the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee. The legislature was trying to take our utility from us. We were under a whole lot of pressure. So I wanted to thank all of you all for being such great colleagues. I wanted to thank all of the charter officers for all of your work, both working together and working with all of us. You've made us coming into office, I think, a very smooth transition. I think made us all look good. I know I come up here saying things very confidently that frequently I get from, my charter officers who say this is how it is. Like, great, I'll go up there. And so you all make us all look good. Thank you all for everything that you do. Thank you for everything you've done for the city during this difficult time. And I wasn't going to mention anything about this, but with the $15, I wanted to. It is a shame that we are where we are, because it does feel kind of like the city is getting into its groove. We were a couple of years ago in a part where the charter officers were resigning and there was a lot of fighting. We had sky-high GRU rates. I remember you, Commissioner Chestnut, ran on trying to stabilize the ship, get everything moving. And geez, it feels like we're at a place now where the commissioners are getting along well. I mean, our GRU rates, when we talk about high GRU rates, a lot of what we're talking about is the fuel adjustment rate. Our base rates are slightly above average, but our fuel adjustment rate is significantly above average. So bring that down to $15, that makes us lower, assuming that that other utilities keep their fuel adjustment the same, lower than Newberry, lower than Ocala, lower than any other investor-owned utility except the larger Florida Power and Light, which is only a couple of bucks cheaper than us. I mean, so people are going into the summer with significantly lower GRU bills, which is huge considering if you guys remember, we did run in August and July, and we heard firsthand how hard it was for people to get hit with those huge bills that they did not expect during a pandemic when the economy was, for some people doing quite well and for other people not doing well at all. And so we're getting into our groove. It's a shame that the state of Florida kind of wants to knock us out of our groove right after years of kind of the slow, meticulous building. But that got us into a position of strength where we are now. But I just wanted to thank my fellow colleagues and all the charter officers and all of the staff that has continued to shepherd us through this process as we come up on 6 months. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Let's see, Commissioner Chestnut, we're going to go to you, and then Mr. Persons, you'll have something to add later, I think. Was it? Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. And to the three new commissioners, it's just been a pleasure working and learning from all of you. To follow up on Mr. Cunningham's comments, I wonder if we could get a press release out, one, saying that we are 7th in the state of Florida in terms of rates, and on the fuel adjustment. But if we could get it out to all media, I think that would be very, very good.
So I just have to respond to what you just requested, because I am literally typing an email that I approve of the press release that has just been written. So yes, immediately that can happen. We are going to wait till Monday to send the press release, but it's been drafted.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. So a few, go ahead, Mr. Persons. Yeah.
I was going to let the continue the love in here. I did want to share some good news. We did receive word this week that we received a Downtown Achievement Award for the city's downtown strategic plan from the International Downtown Association, which is a membership group of downtown managers. So we received the 2023 award that we'll be receiving at their annual conference in Chicago later this year. So I did want to share that piece of good news, and I think we have some momentum behind that plan moving forward. So thank you.
Excellent. That is good news. And I want us to kind of focus as much as we can on when we get parts of our organization are recognized outside the city for things that we do well. We should be talking about that. It's not helpful to staff when they get an award and it gets ignored. And it is a big deal to do that. And our city, I want you to know, is recognized regularly, that it's not uncommon that sort of thing happens. We run a pretty darn good city here, believe it or not. And that doesn't always come across because we're very focused on problem solving. And so we're talking about what's wrong, and we rarely set aside the opportunity to talk about what's right with the city. Now, that said, that leads me into a couple of things. I'm just going to take me a moment to find it here. There we go. So I will say this first, just as an update. I have spoken with, have met with Ms. Bryant, and we have agreed to contract terms, but we did it. We had final agreement yesterday, and I did not want to put that up for a vote today because the public would not have had any opportunity at all to look at it. So on July 20th, that will be one of our items. We've already chosen the clerk. It's just a matter of approving the contract, and that will be on the 7/20 agenda. But I got an email from the clerk's office today recognizing, as I know you all did, but I want to get it on the record out there. This is from Krista Bryant, Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners. Please join me in congratulating City Clerk Michelle D. Natil Williams on receiving the Florida Association of City Clerks 2023 Robert N. Clark Award for the creation of the policy research program housed in the clerk's office. Established in 1998, this award honors a municipal clerk who has significantly promoted and advanced the ideas and goals of their profession by actively participating in the improvements of municipal government in the state and local community. The award is given in honor of FACC founder Robert N. Clark. And we received that on June 19th at the Florida Association of Clerks Summer Academy. When you see her, congratulate her, and please also thank her for her years of service with our city, because of course that this is as of June 30, she will no longer be our clerk, and she's been here longer than I have, which means she's been here forever. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with our clerk, and I will miss her presence here in the building, as I know others will as well. So there's going to be a proclamation for her, I think, at some point. But regardless, I will miss Omi, and I know that you all will as well. We'll look forward to what's next. And I want to point out to anyone who may be watching, we are on summer recess for the next 2 or 3 weeks here. That doesn't mean we're not around. Generally speaking, most folks are still in the office. It is an opportunity for a little bit of scheduled away time. But because we don't have meetings doesn't mean we're not working. So you can contact me as you normally would, and we are here. The thing that recesses do is gives staff an opportunity to catch up with all the stuff that the commission puts on their plate. So that is the big motivation behind the recesses, and I want everybody to know that. With that said, thank you all for all the time and attention and effort and care that all gets put into this, and we will officially see you all again on July 20th. Thank you.
Thank you.